Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight we have guest Peter Anthony. He's the author of Keymaster, Miracle Dogs. He's got a new book coming out soon, The Accidental Prophet. He had a near-death experience that changed his life. Ended up having an incredible experience that knew numerology and was able to use it in a psychic detective way. That's what he did. As a psychic detective, might have seen him on the show Sightings. You might have seen Peter Anthony before, and it's the first time we had him on the show, so I'm really excited to talk to him tonight. We do have a lot of weird to get to. Hopefully Rob will be joining us to run that. Rob, where are you? But we have a lot of weird to get to. I had another week where I was like, oh, what article do I want to cover? I had to cut quite a bit. I always try to keep it to 7 articles, and man, it was hard. There was a lot of weird going on. I mean, it is 2021. It does feel like the world just keeps getting weirder, doesn't it? Wait till you hear some of the stories we got. It'll prove my point. And of course, we will open up the phone lines later in the show. Usually after the second commercial break, we open the phone lines for you to talk to our guests, share your own experiences. If you had a near-death experience, I know Jamie, my co-host here, she's had 2 of them. I think a lot of people that will turn in the show have had these kind of experiences. I'd love you to call in tonight and share your experience with Peter tonight and get his side of it. And share thoughts. 2 people have touched the other side. One of the experiences I haven't had, I don't really want to have, is a near-death experience, but I love hearing about them. I love talking about them, and they do change people's lives, and it did for Peter Anthony. So we're excited to have him on. We got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and roll into the show. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight's guest, Peter Anthony, will be joining us after the World Wide Web of Weird, after our commercial break. And look who's here, right on time. So if his mic's working, isn't here for sound check. How's it going, Rob?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I hear you.
All right, cool.
Awesome. Yes, because we do have a lot to get to. This is Rob Autry from St. Augustine, Florida. How you doing?
Well, considering I just choked on a piece of hamburger, I'm still alive. So
Was that a near-death experience?
It was pretty close.
Yeah, or at least you're with us.
Yeah.
Back from the other side after an incident with a hamburger.
Yep.
And Jamie D, my beautiful co-host, always joining us every Sunday night. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
Doing well, thank you.
Now, I was telling Jamie I didn't get to see the Weird Wednesday this last Wednesday. I was in bed. I'm so sorry. But it seems like, I don't know, you guys are finding a lot of weird stories now, but it seems like I have to, the last couple weeks, keep cutting it down. Like, I can only do 7, and I have all these stories, and I sometimes go, I got to see what they're going to do on Weird Wednesday, so maybe I'll cover something different. It sounds like we are covering. You guys had some that I was like, ooh, maybe, I don't know. There's just some weird stories tonight. It makes you wonder about the human race and aliens and all that beautiful stuff. That's why we do it. So speaking of, let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, I thought I would start out with something we've been continually covering, is more and more footage coming out of the UFO disclosure movement. I guess that's what you call it. This is another one from Jeremy Corbell. If you don't know who Jeremy Corbell is, somebody I'd love to have on the show. If somebody knows Jeremy Corbell, I have him on my Facebook friends, but I'm too afraid to ask. But I'd love to have the guy on the show because, man, he gets some interesting footage from some secret military insiders. And we got a new one from the USS Omaha back again in 2019. I think there were screenshots of this, if I remember right, but we didn't have the video footage. Now we got the video footage, and it's pretty incredible. For those listening on the Paranormal Radio Network, we are a webcast. We do show photos, videos, and stuff of sorts on our webpage, on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, Twitch. You can watch us there. If you want to listen, I'll narrate as best as possible. But first up, like I said, we got this new footage. Newly released video taken aboard the U.S. Omaha Littoral combat ship shows what has been described as a trans-medium vehicle, that is, a vehicle capable of traveling through both air and water, moving, hovering, and disappearing into the Pacific Ocean. The new video has been published by investigative filmmaker Jeremy Corbell. Remember, he did the Bob Lazar documentary, if people seen that. I liked the Skinwalker Ranch documentary, too. It was really good. The video is from the same incident Mystery Wire documented April. Previously, 2 freeze-frame images from the video were made public. A Pentagon spokesperson confirmed last month that one of the freeze-frame images were recorded by U.S. Navy personnel. The video was recorded inside the Omaha's command center just before 11 p.m. on July 15th, 2019. The image on the screen shows a 6-foot in diameter sphere, so, it's big as a person, I guess, that traveled alongside the Omaha for about an hour. It was pitch black outside, so the image was obtained with a FLIR camera that the sensors show heat signatures. Personnel in the command center made multiple recordings of what was on the screen at precisely 11 p.m. The unidentified sphere seamlessly vanished into the ocean. And it seemed like there was a number of these things that went after the ship over a 2 or 3 day period. It's incredible. All right, go ahead and play this beam footage here. Roll the beautiful beam UFO footage.
Took off. Okay.
It's just hovering there. It's so imagine it's 6 feet in diameter, across there. You're looking at, so I mean about as like a person floating out there.
Omaha, 15 kid, Rocco Pearl with the passive ability to launch helo ASAP.
Look, they're talking about getting a helicopter out there after it.
Keep going, bro. We're making chance we could probably bring that 35 relative to
Sure. Yeah. Get a lot of white water up there. So
6-foot swells. Whoa, it's getting close. Yeah, we have 31 knots.
Yeah, it looks like it's just sitting on the water,
Outside, gust of 40.
and then,
Oh, splash,
then it's gone.
Bearing a range.
Wow.
You know, we were talking. I don't remember. Guess we were talking about how a lot of these USOs seem not to affect the water or ripple the water. We were talking about it from a World Wide Web of weird story. I don't know, but they say transmedium be able to float through the air and water, can do both. I mean, if this is another government's technology, we're screwed. We better hope it's aliens. I mean, they're kind of both crap sandwiches, but I guess I would rather hope it's aliens than China or Russia having this, because then we're really screwed.
Yeah.
But I don't. I think it's, what better place to hide is than in the oceans for aliens, besides the moon. But, I mean, seriously, we want to hide, ocean floor. That's where it's at. And what I'm saying about the propulsion technology, it's like they're not even affected by the water. Like, can go in and out of the water without making any ripples in the waves, has been reported. So it's like it's transphasic, not just transmedium.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Well, we got June coming. That's supposed to be the big reveal.
Oh, yeah. Big reveal.
Yeah, you see how my sarcastic hopes are there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, while we talk about the world getting weirder and stranger and maybe the end of time sign, I don't know. And I know we've had one of these stories a couple years ago, but that one was like about a one, and it's before we ever did a show. But there was one, I remember, a three-eyed cow in India that was like totally worshipped. Well, now we got one in Wales. Calf with 3 eyes is unlike any animal vet has ever seen. A farm vet has shared photos of one of her strangest ever discoveries, a calf with 3 eyes. Malin Hughes said she was testing cattle for TB at a farm in North Wales when she spotted the bizarre-looking animal. The calf is around 4 months old and in good health, but it's unclear if it can see out of its extra eye. She said the vet tends to see all sorts of things, cyclops, lambs, animals born with 2 heads, but I've never seen anything like this before. From the outside, the extra eye looks fine, has eyelids and eyelashes, and it's moist too. Moist. I'll say that word one more time for you people. I hate that word moist. It was moist too.
It was a moist eye.
My wife was like, shut up. All right. From the outside, the extra eye looks like it's fine. It has eyelashes and moist too. If some kind of lubricant is being secreted. But it's impossible to know if anything's going on behind that eye. It's weird. I mean, these genetic defects, they do happen, but why the third eye of a cow? Is it a sign of the end times? When I first saw this picture, I'm like, why is there a cow butt? And I thought it was the anus. I don't know. But that's an eye. It's an eye with eyelashes.
Wow.
If that ain't the sign of the end of the world, I don't know what is.
Yeah, man. Too many genetic modifications going on or something.
If that doesn't make you hungry for a hamburger, that
Jason,
Rob almost choked on.
Okay, I was about to get all spiritual about the sacred cows and this cow with the sacred third eye. And you're talking about hamburger.
Well, it was just a tie into Rob's choking on a hamburger. Right?
Oh yeah,
Rob.
Rob.
Thought that Black Angus burger was special. Now I got the third eye burger.
That was welcome, McDonald's. We have your third-eye burger. Get extra sensory senses with your new burger, made from real cows with third eyes. Clone that. Okay. Well, speaking of the choke on that meat, you can choke on this next meat because I can't believe this. It's not paranormal. We just cover all the stupid stuff people do online. Not all of it because there's too much to cover. Like you could have a whole channel on just stupidness of online trends. Yeah, Florida alone. This one I don't know. This is worldwide. People are eating raw meat, to get high in a dangerous online trend. Somebody posted this picture. I'm like, I'm gonna eat this baby. I'm gonna get so high. I'm not joking.
It's so much salmonella.
Right? Of all the bizarre and dangerous trends to gain traction on social media, a practice known as eating high meat might be the all-time grossest, most nauseating. According to IFL Science, the appealing diet trend encourages people to let raw meat out rot for several months or even a year before eating it. It's not like wine. It's not. Once adequately rancid, the decomposed raw meat, aka high meat, is consumed, and supposedly euphoric high feeling soon overtakes the person eating it. While some reportedly eat the high meat for its alleged mind-altering effects, others actually say they prefer the taste of the rotten flesh. Okay, which IFL Sciences says is often described as cheesy and more acidic than your average steak. You still want a hamburger now?
Tasty.
Tasty.
Only if it's got extra cheese on it.
Or an extra eye.
So if it takes a year,
Yeah, they they got to wait a year to find out if this is a real deal. And then they got to eat it too to find out. Gross.
I
Look at
guess,
that.
it is consumable instead of the Tide Pods. It is food.
This article goes on from Newsweek. It's important to note that raw and fermented meat is eaten all around the world and has been for centuries. Cured meats like salami are a perfect example. There's a whole big difference between this and salami, okay? But those examples are not all at all considered similar or controlled to featured in rotting meat that's called high meat. The concept of high meat is not entirely new, as Vice reports. The trend has been lurking on Reddit and other internet enclaves for years. In 2017, for example, an anti-vegan YouTuber posted a video of himself eating meat that had been rotting for a full year. Meanwhile, a 2-year-old Reddit poster, carnivores, asked how one might transition to eating rotting ready meat. It's not a diet fad. Don't, no. Atkins, eat lots of rotten Atkins meat diet, I guess.
Deadkins. They need Deadkins.
Deadkins, yeah. But, I think it goes to say that I don't care what the high is. It's called salmonella. And, and I don't know. You might get some worms out of it. And think of the bacteria in a year that grow in a meat.
You had me at the rancid meat.
Yeah.
It's got a cheesy
Yeah.
acidic.
I mean, I could probably go out in my backyard and eat a dog turd and get a buzz or something off of it, but I'm not going to do that.
I'm sure there's a lot of stuff you go around licking and get a head change off of.
It reminds me when I was a kid. I was a high school kid my freshman year, and this kid hopped in the back of the seat, and he was smoking something. We're like, what are you smoking? What is that? He was smoking dried out, rotten banana peels, because he read somewhere, and this is before Reddit,
people do that
he could get high. And we're like, get out of the car. Take your banana joint with you and get out of the car. And I was like, what? Is it really that worth it to you to get high? You're going to smoke a rotten banana peels.
But
is it really that worth it? Oh my God. Yeah, it might be true, but is it worth it? You really want to get, I'm fine being sober. I'm cool. I'm cool. I don't need to eat rotten meat or smoke a banana joint, rotten banana joint. All right, let's move on. I digress. All right, where were we? That was Article 3, right? All right, Article 4, just when, people are eating rotted meat, then you got, weird brain diseases happening. Why? Mysterious, this is sad actually, brain disease is spreading in Canada. This is actually really scary. A Canadian province of New Brunswick is tracking 48 cases of mysterious new brain disease that have neurobiologists stumped. Patients with ages ranging from 18 to 85 have started experiencing a variety of symptoms, including aggression, anxiety, depression, muscle aches, and spasms. Some patients developed insomnia, language impairment, and even rapid weight loss and muscle atrophy. Sounds like they're turning into zombies. Several patients have experienced hallucinations, including transient Capgras delusions, a psychiatric disorder in which a patient starts believing that a close friend or family member is really replaced by an imposter. Wow. Roger Ellis, a man in his early 60s, born and raised in New Brunswick, Acadian Peninsula, the area where many of the 48 cases occurred, experienced many of these symptoms. He had delusions and hallucinations, weight loss, aggression, repetitive speech. Ellis' son, Steve, told the BBC, at one point he couldn't even walk, so in the span of 3 months we were being brought to the hospital to tell us they believed he was dying, but no one knew why. At first, Ellis' doctors suspected it was a case of Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease, or CJD. I totally butchered that. A fatal and rare degenerative brain disorder, but Ellis' test came back negative along with countless other tests. Our first common idea is that there's a toxic element acquired in the environment of this patient that triggers the degenerative changes. So something in that environment. You know what it reminds me of, though? We were just talking about a week or two ago is some of these symptoms sound similar to what people going through with the Havana syndrome, with like the microwave radiation and stuff. I don't know. Or it's just zombies.
Or they're eating rotten meat. I don't know.
Right. It's like we're like, as a human race, we're really trying hard.
Oh yeah, we
for
are.
the zombie apocalypse. We really try. And if you listen to Fauci hearings on Congress about what they're doing, with trying to make a virus jump from animal to human, it's like, oh, we really are trying to get a zombie virus going here.
Yeah.
Let's just keep experimenting. All right. Let's move on. We're running out of time here. All right. This is why Bigfoot stays away from us. Speaking of Bigfoot, Oregon hiker films alleged Bigfoot in the woods. Did you like that little segue? Outdoor adventurer Mike Bodwitz has captured what he believes to be evidence of a real-life Bigfoot. The clip, which was filmed running on a laptop screen using another camera, which makes me suspect, was recorded earlier this month and allegedly shows a large ape-like creature partially obscured by foliage. According to Bodewitz, he had caught sight of it while walking through a ravine. I saw it with my own eyes, he said. I didn't want to get any closer to make it nervous or anything, but it's clearly keeping an eye on me. I felt that I needed to back away and move further up the hill to give it some space. Unfortunately, however, the video, which can be viewed below, or we're going to show here in a second, is rather difficult to make out, and it does not appear as though the Bigfoot actually moves at all during the clip. And he doesn't. It's actually a freeze frame of the whole thing. He doesn't actually play the video. But you do see something there, so I don't know. I don't know why he can't show us the original video, why he has to screen capture it. But go ahead and play it there. And I zoom in and
all right, my
focus
friend,
on it.
Another video I call Watching Me. I was walking down in a ravine into the brush, and then I noticed the Sasquatch is watching me. There he is right there. I couldn't tell if it was a male or female, but
There's only one way to really tell.
See any kind of facial features. It's dark. He's peeking out of the brush. A lot of people will say, oh, it's a stump. But this
could be a stump. I don't know. You're filming it off your screen.
I was actually walking downhill, so this is actually really high off the ground. There's no way a stump could be that tall.
The black
We need to see it
spot?
moving.
I really saw it with my eyes. It was a Sasquatch.
If you watch the whole video, go ahead and mute it.
To make it nervous or anything, but it's
Is that a hole in a cavern, or it was sticks in front of it,
or a stump or a Bigfoot? I don't know, because he doesn't play the video. Here's my zoom in as best I can. I think it's supposed to be like a head or something there, but you can't really tell. And if it moved, that might help us understand if this was something there, but he doesn't play the video. You notice it's paused.
It looks like a hole.
Because whatever video footage he has of it, I'm sure it moves, but it's like that quick, you know?
It looks like erosion with tree branches in front of it.
Looks like a bunch of blurry tree images to me. Like, if this thing moves or there's more to it, then show us.
Yeah.
But the Bigfoot hiding seek game continues. All right, let's move on. All right. Been a long time since I've had anything. I'm sure tons of people get stuff here all the time because, at least before COVID was it's a very popular haunted tourist location is Waverly Hills. My boss even went there. He's not even a paranormal investigator, and he went there. I've never been there. It was one of the trips I should have had. I've never been there.
It's my bucket list.
A woman visiting the famous Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky snapped a spooky photograph that appears to show an apparition lurking in a doorway. The eerie image was captured this past Sunday evening by Maggie Clark while she was participating in one of the site's popular ghost tours. As she was exploring the top floor of the building, she noticed a ball on the floor and, hoping that she might catch sight of the object moving, snapped a picture of the general area using the night mode setting on her camera. While she did not capture any motion from the toy, Clark wound up photographing something far more fantastic. In the odd image, a curious form can be seen right at the edge of the doorway, although it appears that as one looks down towards the bottom of the anomaly, the distinct outline of a shoe-clad foot is readily available or apparent to see. I can't read that. Darn it. After Clark shared the picture on social media, observers argued that the photo was doctored. However, she insists that is not the case, telling that posting a fake picture serves me no purpose. She also noticed the anomaly only appeared on one image among a succession of pictures she took in that moment. As long as nobody's standing there and she didn't catch anybody, I mean, that totally looks like a foot and like a body is about to reform.
Yeah.
You can see through it too. Did she have consecutive pictures? Like then she took a photo.
Yeah, according to her, she has consecutive photos, and this only showed up in one. But you people on investigations or these ghost hunts, I'll see them, snap, 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 and then you get one photo. It's like they caught the ghost in that split second or something. I think it's interesting. I wouldn't say right off the bat I think she faked it.
Just because the location is known for so much things like that, she gets an extra point.
I mean, it looks like, that's a foot. That she caught something half materializing or half in that picture. If ghosts are at like a different frequency or speed than us or like flash, and she's clicking picture. She catches the 1 second it appears. That's interesting. I don't know. All right, we want to get this last one though. I mentioned, talk about the UFO disclosure coming out, and I keep saying on this show that I don't care what the government has to say. We are the disclosure. All of us experiencers when it comes to UFO phenomenon. All of us experiencers we're the disclosure movement. We finally had enough. We don't care what anybody thinks, and we're going to tell our story. And this woman did. Woman from the mirror.co UK. Woman claims she's been abducted by aliens 52 times and has bruises to prove it. Paula Smith, 50, says her first extraterrestrial experience happened when she was a little girl. Since then, she claims she has been abducted more than 50 times. A British woman claims she has been abducted 52 times and has bruises to prove it. Paula Smith, 50, says her first experiment. Well, I hate how it repeats in the article. Since then, she claims she has been abducted more than 50 times. Paula Bradford, Yorkshire, shared images of her bruises she says were left on her body by aliens following one of the abductions. She said also she's drawn pictures of a silver alien to show what they look like. The woman also claims to have been in a UFO. I've experienced 52 paranormal incidents, she said. Now, she's got a lot of photos. The bruises are interesting because it reminds me of what we've showed of like Terry Lovelace on the show. Go ahead and show some of the other. There should be other photos for this. That's photo A. Go to photo B. And the aliens are actually pretty spooky. The alien picture she got. Yes, it looks like a gray, but something spooks me out about it. That's one of them. That's the alien she painted, which... The eyes would freak me out. Look, there's like an iris behind the eye, and it reminds me of a nightmare I had once. It really does, and it freaks me out. Her painting. You see it? She such detail in that little painting. You can see the iris in there. Now look at these marks. I think I have one more, maybe one or two more. Oh, maybe that was it. Maybe that was all I had. But that alien picture really does freak me out. Pull that one up again. See how she drew like little, like it's not just the eyes are black. There's actually a little like eye thing behind it. You can see. See it? Something about that freaks me out. Like it reminds me of a nightmare I had.
Yeah, more on the eye closest to you. You can actually see like the eyeball.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. You know, so what? The government's going to finally come out and admit stuff? No, they're not. I think they're going to flub up a bunch of stuff and reports and some footage and say, we don't know. When, there are people within the government that do know. Not a lot, I'm sure. But if we want disclosure, it's going to be us. Just being open about our experiences like this lady here. Let's get her name proper here. Paula Smith. Kudos to you, Paula. I believe you. And we need more people like you to come out there and share their experiences, not be afraid. And that's what's going to do it. Honestly, that's why I love Terry Lovelace having him on, and that he opened his book up to so many people. His email told people email him with their experiences, and they did. Whitley Strieber did that. They're trying to get people to talk, not to be alone. You're not alone. And if we really want disclosure, it's us. Everybody's got to come out and talk about their experiences. Don't be afraid of ridicule. If somebody ridicules, screw them. They don't know. There'll be a big surprise to them when the UFOs land on the White House lawn one day.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll happen. I don't. There's no reason for them to land there now. Nobody's in charge. But that's it for the World Wide Web of Weird. Our guest tonight is Peter Anthony. He's author of Keymaster and Miracle Dogs. He's got a book that'll come out in the near future called Accidental Prophet. He had a near-death experience that changed his life. I mean, I think about everybody I've had a near-death experience that changes their lives, but they have ability sometimes, and he did. He gained ability. In math, I've always been jealous of people who are good at math. Like, if I were to have a near-death experience, that'd be a great ability to come in with, because I suck at math. I'm so jealous of people that do. And like, if I got there, like, oh, can I get a super ability in math? I'll take it. There's a lot of other super abilities people get, but math and numerology is something so fascinating. But like I said, I suck at math, so I never got into it. But it's still fascinating. All right, guys. Peter Anthony, author of Keymaster, Miracle Dogs, and The Accidental Prophet. It will be on after the short commercial break. We'll be right back.
every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Of the second kind, physical evidence of a UFO. Close encounters of the third kind, contact. From Steven Spielberg, the director of Jaws, comes one of the most ambitious and unusual films ever made. And what you will see has never been seen before. It's a cosmic mystery crossing what many scientists believe will be the next threshold of human experience. It's called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It begins in an Indiana town and leads to one inescapable conclusion. We are not alone. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Certificate A. Now showing at the Odeon, Leicester Square.
The international chart-topping, Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest has been described as terrifyingly real, a must-read, shocking and chilling brilliance, genuinely worrying, utterly frightening. Don't read before bed. Described as one of the spookiest writers out there, best-selling author G.L. Davies presents Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest. The true paranormal account that is shocking the world. Dare you enter? Dare you read? Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, and wherever books are sold. Pray you never have to live there.
This is the sound of a space clock aboard a U.S. satellite 180 miles above the Earth. No one winds up this timepiece. It's powered by a tiny battery, a battery that delivers power for years without replacement. Now the same type of battery, the Duracell battery, can bring new reliability and long life to your battery-operated equipment. Radios, cameras, toys, all run far longer. Duracell batteries, the long-distance power cells, outlast any ordinary battery. The same type of battery that keeps space clocks running for years can bring long life to anything powered by batteries. Dura, as in durable. Cell, as in power cell. The Duracell battery, made by Mallory.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Switch to DCS ranging.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe, 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Peter Anthony. Peter Anthony is the author of several nonfiction books, including Keymasters and Miracle Dogs. He's a freelance writer for many regional magazines, including Johns Hopkins Medical Journal, a television producer, a former image consultant for CBS News. Anthony's time at CBS allowed him to work alongside VIPs like Dan Rather, Diane Sawyer, Leslie Stahl, as well as Academy Award winner Shirley McClain, Greer Garson, and several Emmy-nominated actors. Peter has appeared on the John Tesh, Lisa Gibbons Show, Fox's Good Morning Show, The History Channel, PM Magazine, The Age of Truth. Peter has also been a guest on Coast to Coast with George Noory, iHeartRadio, The Art Bell Show, After Midnight FM, and The Outer Limits. Anthony is no stranger to the international community. Not only was Peter Anthony featured as a transnational guest on the International Summit for Peace, but was featured in the Beyond Science Epoch Times to a worldwide audience of over 149 countries. He's appeared on countless broadcast shows throughout Europe, including Denmark, Germany, England, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Peter Anthony's near-death experience provided unexplained mathematical equations while he was on the other side, which set in motion a career in TV as a psychic detective using numerology as a means to resolve paranormal cases on such shows as Sightings, Mysteries of the Unexplained, Fact or Fiction, Borderline Unsolved Mysteries, and Celebrity Psychic. Peter's sequel to his book, Keymaster, The Accidental Prophet, soon to be released in 2021. It's an honor to have him on the show. Like I said, we will take your phone calls after the next commercial break. Just hang in there if you got a question tonight or want to tell us about your own near-death experience. I love hearing that. We've been on this subject a lot. We have 2 guests in the last month or so on this subject, and it's important to me. I think it's the ultimate exploration where we're all going to end up. We all have a stake in what happens on the other side, don't we? We're all going to end up there. So maybe that's why it should fascinate everyone, I think. Well, all right, we got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get to our guest. All right, let me pull my guest up here. I think he's upside down.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you got to flip the iPad.
Hold on a second. You're absolutely.
I was watching you in the waiting room like, oh, he's upside down.
Yeah, well, I came back as a mathematical expert, but certainly the dyslexia doesn't help out, does it?
Well, welcome to the show, Peter. Like I said, it's an honor to have you on the show for the first time. We've been covering this subject a lot lately on near-death, just by happenstance. I don't think it out like, oh, we're going to do all near-death shows this next month. But it's been a lot lately. But actually, something I'm very interested in, to me, is everybody has a stake in what happens after they die. You know, people that just don't want to talk about it or think about it. I'm like, I'm always, since I was a little kid, going, how? We're all going to be there. Aren't you curious? I think it's fear. A lot of people stay away from it from hearing it. But I think your kind of story, the near-death experience, takes away some of that fear for people if they would just listen. And then it doesn't mean they're going to get superhuman abilities if they die and come back. But you have that experience too, which is also another fascinating aspect to it. So wherever you want to start in this journey of yours, I'm sure it starts with the near-death experience, but let us know how it all began.
Well, at the time of my near-death experience, I was in the height of my career with CBS News as a freelance image consultant. And, you know, we were having a wrap party that evening on a show that we just finished. And I had been diagnosed months and months earlier with what they thought was a stomach ulcer. And because we were so busy on so many different projects and I was traveling all over the place, you know, I did something, and I take full responsibility here. I let something that should have been taken care of months ago, up to my near-death experience, go. I just let it go. And so that night of my, I guess, that perfect storm, I was, as I said, at a wrap party and also celebrating my birthday. And I went into the bathroom, and I just doubled over in pain. And it was 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And from that moment on until actually tonight's show, everything's been rather surreal. So I think starting with who I was before and of course where I ended up, I think is probably the most important question I can share with your audience. Prior to that, I had a speech impediment, so I stuttered somewhat, especially, you know, doing something like a show like this or any particular show. Right. I was certainly not mathematically inclined, kind of like you. So I was an introvert. I was a skilled artist. In fact, I was starting to become a special effects and makeup artist, and I was agnostic. So I didn't believe much in anything other than you live, you die, and you go. That's pretty much the end of it. So back to the near-death experience, as I was in the bathroom, I felt something pretty horrific coming on. And I went home. By the time I got to my front door, I collapsed, and I called a friend. And I don't, for that point on, how I got to the hospital and what happened, and I couldn't even tell you. But fast forward to the punch. By the time I got into the OR, so many medical things went wrong. I didn't know at the time that I had a perforated viscus. I didn't know at the time that I had tuberculosis. And my near-death experience was taking place during the height of the AIDS epidemic, and they were reluctant to check me in. So here I am in the hospital being refused to be checked in. And so they finally convinced this poor nurse, I don't know how old he was, just a young boy he was, and was rushing me down towards the ER, and he kind of freaked out, again, thinking that I had the AIDS virus, and he just kind of just shoved me in a corner and left me there. So here I am bleeding. I had been bleeding since I guess the diagnosis of June the 4th of that year, 1987, and I was just dropping weight and dropping weight and dropping weight. So by the time I got into the OR, I mean, it was like, again, the perfect storm. What's important here and why I bring all this up is because as I finally got into the OR, and I remember being put on the operating table, I began to go in and out of consciousness. And I remember it's almost like this kind of separation of physical body, me, Peter, looking down at Peter in physical form, and I could actually, almost like a split screen, seeing two events taking place. And even though I was kind of in and out of consciousness, I could hear the doctors and the nurses go into medical protocol. And I remember them saying, we're going to lose him. And they could not keep the IVs in me. I had lost so much, blood and obviously so much weight. So by the time they got the IVs in me and they rolled me on my side, I couldn't tell you what happened at that point. I just remember there was like a flat, it was like everything went black. And I just remember this line. And I felt something attach itself to my solar plexus. And this is where it gets interesting for those of you who are into spirits. But as I'm looking down at Peter Anthony in physical form, Peter Anthony in spirit form, so there really is I can't see me up here, but I can feel me up here. Yeah. And as I'm looking over the clock, I could see what so many of us who've had near-death experiences, what we refer to as the spinning tunnel. I call it the bullseye. And as I'm spinning towards this, I guess, about to go through this tunnel, this is the first part of my experience of the paranormal spirit world that took place. Before I went into the tunnel, I began to see spirits. Many people claim they have had encounters with their family members and their friends and their grandparents, etc. Well, that didn't happen to me at that particular time. What happened to me, I was seeing people from the 1800s and the 1700s all dressed in these period, I guess, I don't want to use the word costumes, but obviously in period attire. And I recognized these people. I knew who they were. I could kind of start feeling these flashes of my past life. I didn't know at the time, but these were people from my past life. And I was actually able to see them in these transparent figures standing at the tunnel, encouraging me to go in. So that was the first part of my introduction to the spirit world. As I got into the tunnel, I went in and I kind of was hovering, and I could see inside the tunnel, like my grandparents and my brother and, all those people, what I call my relatives and friends who had already passed. Now, here's what's interesting, because when you're going through this tunnel, and I don't know how many experiences you've had on the show, it's not like you go through this tunnel with a logical mind going, well, what's happening here and who are all these people?
Questioning it.
You don't do that. For some reason, you go into this tunnel, the bullseye. I guess the best word to use to your listening audience is I was accepting. I wasn't fighting it. I was allowing. And as I'm seeing, as I said, relatives from my past, one of the first things that took place as I was spinning through this tunnel, I began to see mathematical equations. Besides quantum physics and geometry, I began to see triple codes. 222, 333, 444, 1111, 777. And I was downloading all these mathematical equations, and it made sense to me, and I accepted it. The second part of that is I was downloading consciousness. Now, I want to bring something to your listening audience because I don't know how many people have experienced this side of the near death, and I know one other lady that has done this, and she's in San Diego. We both experienced the same thing, but downloading consciousness.
Yeah.
So I say to all my hosts, so imagine the mind of Darwin and Einstein and Tesla and, you know, your
Right.
high school English teacher. All this stuff was being downloaded into my consciousness, and I accepted it. I understood it. I didn't doubt it. And, you know, it's almost like just reading, you know, the Bible in a matter of, you know, of 1 minute. Everything was happening so fast that page after page after page after page
Right.
was just download, and got it. And then I began to see the colors. Again, kind of, I don't know how to describe these colors, but the hues I think that I had experienced, you know, having been an artist. I even to this day I don't see those colors. They're foreign to me, but in my mind they're still there. So, but these colors were coordinated with the mathematical symbols that I was seeing. It was like music, and I could hear these. I don't want to use the word angelic voices because that's not what I heard, but it was melodic voices that I could hear. And the further and further and further I went into this spinning tunnel, the further and further I felt myself being detached from the physical world and going into another world.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think, you know, for me, seeing these numbers, I have traveled all around the world. I've done so many different radio interviews, and I didn't even know at the time. It wasn't even until probably into the 2000s that I began to tap into these triple codes, the 333s and the 222s and the 777s, etc. But I began to use these codes at 1111. These codes began to make sense to me. It's almost like they were talking to me. So as I was going through this tunnel, we talk about our life review, and so many have spoken about the life review. And for me, this was a changing point, was a critical point because, and I want to say this to everyone because this is very important. I think part of our world problem is, you know, we have so many opinions and so much judgments against so many different cultures and religions and, you know, many subcultures. But what I noticed when I was on the other side, there was no judgment. There is no black, there is no white, there is no gay, there is no straight, there is no religious, there is no, agnostic, atheist. None of that exists. What it does exist when you're spinning through this tunnel before your life review is consciousness, is spirit, the essence of spirit. And within that is this thing called love. Now, many people who go through the tunnel talk about peace and love and kindness, and these are the typical things that we experience. But how we experience this is it goes into our solar plexus right here. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because as a psychic detective, when I went on set and I worked, this is how I would tap into, communicating with the spirit world.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yes, right here. For those who study, the grids on the body, the chakras, the head chakra, the throat chakra, the solar plexus, on downward to the base chakra. For those of you who are intuitive, for those of you who are healers, for those of you who are Reiki masters, for those who are astrologers, numerologists, even ghost chasers, and someone like yourself, this is where we communicate with the other side. This is where we see and feel from the other side. I didn't know that at the time. I learned this much later. But this is where everything was coming to me, here and in the back. So as I'm downloading information, it's coming here, and it's coming here, and it's coming here. And it's all making sense to me. Life review, back to choices. I could go on for hours talking about my life review, but I think for me, what it allowed me to see, and I guess the most important thing for me, going back to using the word judgment, I was able to look down at myself, Peter Anthony, and his world, and again, from 0 to 60, and look at every moment of my life was recorded, like a matrix. It's almost like, watching Neo up there, and you can see all these different, squares on this mega screen, the stratosphere of all your life review going on, every moment of your life taking place. Memories you forgot about, things that, relationships, people that said that they loved you, and you go, who are these people? But not a part of your life. But as I said, so many of these things were taking place at this time. And again, going back, you get every moment. And so what I learned on the other side, and what helped me to become, I think, what I consider, a pretty proficient, ghost chaser, was learning to allow the energy right here just to take you to wherever it needed to go and to communicate effectively by using this part of the physical body. And as I'm looking down at my life review, I am seeing a planet that is ravaged in war. I'm seeing the animal kingdom, that's being abused. I'm seeing, politicians and world leaders who have been selected into power by people who are so eager to give these people power, who use the power against us. And as I'm looking at all this and seeing these things we call reality of today, you're not judging it. You're not, there's a bad leader and this horrible, prime minister and this president over here. You don't do that. You're looking down at this, and there is this is where the compassion comes in. You have an overriding compassion of understanding, not only with what's going on the planet, but yourself, your what I call human errors. You don't judge yourself as much as you say into your consciousness, gosh, Peter, I could have done better. And so you go away with that. I think one of the most incredible things that happened to me after I had this life review, and as I said, there were so many things that did take place in my life, but I went to a place called Bordeaux. Now, for those who... Yes. And Bordeaux, for those who understand the Eastern philosophies, it's the in-between place, the other world. The cleansing station is what I called it. And so here's where I'm going to get kind of witchy-woo-woo with all of you guys. What I learned on the other side was that everything is based on mathematical frequency, period. We have sound, even the ancient, astrology and numerology and the tarot, everything is based upon a mathematical equation. And so as all this is being downloaded into my consciousness, and I'm in this place of what I refer to as Bordeaux. For those who are Catholic, you might relate to it as limbo or purgatory, but not with that hell damnation stigma to it. But as I'm sitting here having this conversation with a fragmented energy, it's almost like if you're looking into a sun, and here you are again in spirit form, or the essence of spirit form, and you're having conversation with this huge, I guess, circular sphere of fragmented energy that's gold, and it's pulsating and it's vibrating and it's breaking into different pieces, but it's communicating. And it was talking to me. And as I'm looking down at our planet and seeing all these things going on, again, me being agnostic, and it's not that I went, oh, I'm agnostic, I don't believe in God, but I remember this part of my near-death experience. I remember it loudly hearing my voice, almost in an echo chamber, said, this is not what God intended. I remember that so clearly. And I was given a choice if I wanted to come back. I knew it wasn't my time to go just yet. But I remember that voice asking, do you want to go back? And here's where it gets rather interesting, because not only was I given a choice, but I also was able to see my future. And why I bring this up, because I said earlier that I had a speech impediment. I stuttered, I'm kind of glad that Biden kind of brought this up for so many of us who were made fun of in early years of life. And I had a very insecure, I guess, feeling about speaking, etc. And I remember seeing my future with me traveling around the world on book lectures. Well, first of all, the idea of even writing a book, 3 books, 4 books coming out. It's not that I denied it or think this is not possible. I accepted it. But I also saw myself traveling around the world. I saw myself doing things that I just thought were beyond. But I also saw all the medical complications that I would experience, the drug addiction, the attempted suicide, all these things that I felt were, again, not going into a place of fear, accepting it and knowing that this was the journey, but do you want to go back? Or do you want to go with us and be on the happy trail and have a great life here? Who knows? But so I said yes, and I took that journey going back. Now here again is what's interesting. As I am in this stratosphere, stars and solar plexus, and I'm out there in this, again, stratosphere. It's space.
Yeah.
It's stars and galaxies. As I'm seeing myself going back to I call Mother Earth, I'm seeing myself in fragmented energy. Again, if you just had to break energy up, and it just like mercury, if you trying to shatter glass, it's all this fragmented energetic form coming down, and on either side of me, and I write about this in my book Keymaster, but on either side of me, I could see these souls again that had already gone to Bordeaux, the cleansing station, and they had made the commitments to come in as new life, as past life, where their grievances, their human error had been cleansed in Bordeaux. So an example, if this person here was coming back as a wealthy person, perhaps in the last lifetime he was poor, so he comes back understanding both sides of the coin. Over and over and over and over again, I experienced the different soul levels of consciousness coming into Mother Earth. And these light fragments of energy were like, just imagine you're a zoom lens and you're watching, from my perspective and looking down at Mother Earth, and you see this soul going to Paris, and you're seeing this soul fragment of energy going into Berlin, and this one's going into Kentucky, and all around you. And you're having this journey go down into Mother Earth. And of course, I landed back in my body. And then, of course, I guess what I don't remember, I remember hitting my body. And I remember the pain, and I could smell the drugs in my system. I could taste the sulfur drugs. I could feel the pain, the surgery inside. And I remember when I hit my body, I remember it was such an impact that it was almost as though someone just threw me against the wall. And of course, after you've had surgery, everything in your body is aching. And I just remember the pain was so intense. Right. And then I was unconscious for 3.5 weeks.
How long were you actually technically dead?
You know what? The doctors said for a couple of minutes. And I want to, it's an interesting question because you say that, because I want to bring something back to this beginning stage of, I died on November the 11th. At 11:11 p.m.
Oh, geez.
In OR 11.
On your birthday?
Yes, on my birthday.
November 11th.
So 11:11, for those who have an affinity with the number 11:11, this is probably, I guess, my journey of trying to, when I did recover, and it was a grueling recovery, and when I was able to start, when I got my vision back many, many months later, when I began to read books, I began to study numerology, because what I wanted to do was to see I wanted to know why I was seeing all these numbers, these codes. And back in the 80s, there were no books on numerology with compound numbers like 1 through 9. Back to your original question, it was my personal doctor who said that I died clinically. I never heard from the surgeons. I guess I was just so out of it. So I, from my understanding, he said it was several minutes. And, it didn't really matter to me, thinking back on it later on, because I think many people said, how come you didn't? There were so many medical complications and mishaps that took place that night. It was the perfect storm. But for me, I think oftentimes, and I'm not trying to, get your question here, but it's really important. If you have watched the Titanic with Leo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, and you have experienced this an amazing movie, and then someone comes up to you and says to you, well, what color were his shoes? What was he wearing, the night he had his shoes on? I mean, your mind is going, but good God, there's so much more other information here. And I think oftentimes in my near-death experience world, we focus on how minutes we die because that makes it legit. And I'm not saying that it's, those are things that we should negate, because I solely believe that. But for me, that wasn't the most important thing. And I think part of my drama, part of my mission, part of my determination was no one believed me. No one.
It's 1980s for sure. I mean, you already.
You just, people number one, I mean, they just, when you're talking about, well, first of all, I mean, when I came back and got out of that, I think they said I was unconscious for 3.5 weeks. Once I got out of ICU and they went into my room, I couldn't shut up. Now, you're talking to a person back then, if you got yes or no out of me, that was, applaud Peter, he just spoke. I came back, just talk. I talked about my conversation with this energetic form. I talked about past lives. I talked about the spirit world. I was just talking. And I could hear the nurses. This guy's a whack job. I mean, I could look at the doctors' faces. I came back with this ability.
You're hearing their thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah.
To this day, this still haunts me, because I think part of what my experience as a ghost chaser was, I could connect with the spirit world here,
Yeah.
telepathically, having these conversations with ghosts. And so I could hear our thoughts. And again, going back to what I said earlier about energetic form, thoughts are nothing but energy. Everything you put out to the world has its energy returned back to you. I didn't know that at the time, obviously. So for me, listening to the doctors and the nurses and even friends that were coming to see me, and I think for me the most difficult part of my coming back into this body was the doctors didn't listen to me. I was trying to tell them how to treat my body. Now, obviously, I don't have a medical background. What began to happen was, and this is how I began to communicate with the spirit world, doctors and nurses that had passed were coming in my room.
Oh, jeez.
And so I was, learning about my hemoglobin levels, the medications they were giving me, the complications, and why. I was so out of it. And I knew that the high doses of prednisone and the morphine, and I could go on down the list of drugs.
But all these the deceased doctors are giving you this information.
Well, they were coming in, and as I said, I'm sitting here in my hospital bed, in a private room, and I remember, that was at the 11 o'clock, check on Peter Anthony, right? And after the nurse would leave, it's coming like, I see dead people, right? Well, as soon as she would leave, or he would leave, that door would open up, or someone would just appear on my bed and start talking to me.
There's a show on BBC called Ghosts. One of my favorite scenes in this, because this woman falls out a window, and now she can see and talk to dead people. And she goes to the hospital to get checked out because she's like, why am I, I'm going crazy. And she's talking to this doctor about her symptoms. She's just like, what do you think? Why did it? Goes, oh, you see dead people. She's like, what? And he's like, well, you see me, right? She goes, yeah. Well, okay, I'm dead. And he gets up, stands up, and this doctor comes and goes, she's really good. Doctors, if they die, they're still trying to help people. I've seen a lot of evidence of that. I think that's so incredible. The reason I asked the time question, like how long how long were you out? What I find incredible about these experiences is that you were dead for maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
2 or 3
minutes. Time didn't exist for you over there. You have, way longer experience than that. And that's what's so incredible about these experiences, the time differential.
I know, I so get that, because as I said, and again, back in the 80s, there was no near-death experience. That word to me was foreign. In fact, I didn't learn about my near-death experience until an agent approached me. And obviously she knew me, before my near-death experience, and knew me before CBS. She was a part of my success. But when she saw me, I was getting my hair cut. And I was at the shampoo bowl. And she came up to me and she said, you died. And I looked at her and I freaked out. And I said, how do you know that? And she said, because I can see auras and see colors, and I can see this yellow coming out of her stomach. And then she told me that she also had passed. And we kind of and again.
So she had a near death.
Yeah, but that wasn't the word that was used. That she just said, I just died and I came back. And that was the word that we used because, you just didn't go back then and say, I had a near-death experience. People were looking like you were crazy. So I kept most of what I, I guess, experienced on the other side. I kept it kind of private until 2007. I think part of my conflict was I had a high-profile career. I was traveling with, obviously very important people, and I wasn't going to come out to, my coworkers and I died and this is what happened. I just didn't do it. Even as the paranormal investigator, Jason, I kept that private. I had two worlds going on. So, so it was, for me, was, I think, going back to that moment in life and the ghosts that were appearing to me. I have to say this, if it weren't for those doctors and nurses and a Native American Indian coming on and sitting at the foot of my bed, I don't think I would be here. Because
they really saved your life.
Yeah, well, they did. I mean, the Native American Indian gave me all kinds of homeopathic ingredients. I was drinking pure aloe vera juice. I was taking high doses of garlic, a root. What else was I taking? Thistle, acidophilus. I, with the ghosts that were coming to me at nighttime, during witching hours, were telling me to wean myself off the prednisone and the sulfur drugs, and I just, because I was losing my eyesight, and then add the fact that I couldn't walk. So here I am in a wheelchair, and I don't, looking back at that moment in my life, which is worse if you think about this, to lose your eyesight or to lose the ability to walk. So those were the two handicaps I had to overcome. And I knew by talking to these doctors and nurses that if I listened to this particular doctor, that I was going to die. And so I begged my own personal, doctor to get me off this particular floor and get me into another floor, because the nurses that were there, they would come in and I could hear their thoughts. And when I say hear their thoughts, I want to say something that's really important, because for me, as a ghost chaser, when I came back heightened. And for those of us who had near-death experiences, so imagine, you're like a wolf, in the Alaskan, wilderness, on a snow-covered, cold day, and you are stalking a prey. Every tree branch, every bird, every step that you take, you hear. And that's what I came back with. And it's just, and the colors, as I said, though I was losing my sight, when I, again, I'm in the world of just darkness, the colors that I remember from the other side, and the reason why I'm closing my eyes is because I go back to those colors, and it's, again, there's like these orbs of just, fluttering all over me. So, but anyway, I certainly ask me questions. I'll go on and take your time away from some of the questions you may.
No, it's truly fascinating to listen to your experience. Very, I love hearing the descriptions of what most of the time when people have near-death experience, it's really hard for them to describe what they visually saw, because it's so out of this world compared to this world. But you have some descriptions there of what you were in the stratosphere, and then you could see this huge orb of melting light kind of coming at you. These imagery.
Just imagine it's explosion fragments of light. It's almost like if you had to, put on screen this gold, sphere, and then someone that's behind said, okay, now let's go break for special effects. Let's go break this glass and film it in slow-mo. And you just see these particles of glass shattering everywhere. That was my experience with this energetic form I call God. Well, you can imagine that all the evangelicals, every time I talk about this all around the world, the hate email I get every day just for saying that.
That's so sad.
Yeah, well, it is, but that's just what I saw. That's what I experienced.
You're just describing what you saw. The other thing you talk about, when you first see the tunnel, and you see the spirits, and you have this automatic knowing that they're from a past life. What I think of, and we've been talking about this on the show a lot lately, when it comes up past lives, all the mathematical information, all that stuff that's it's like you are on Earth living, you're cut off from the cloud. Once you go back to that side, you're downloading it's like when your phone finally reconnects to the cloud, and it's got to download all the stuff that's been waiting there. That's what I kind of picture. Maybe the math, all that math knowledge you personally, your higher self, your soul has gained over past lives. And as you connect to that other side, it's we're downloading all this soul information now he can realize, or something like that.
Well, I was very fortunate too, because I had a girlfriend who was very understanding. As I said, so many people kind of left my bedside because they thought it was a whack job. And so she would come to me while I was in ICU. And also, as I mentioned, I was losing my vision, so I couldn't see. And so I asked her to bring numerology books and read them to me. Yeah. And while I was in ICU, and this is real important for those who say, when they're, they're in a coma or when they're unconscious, they can't hear you. That is so not true. Because what was happening was, while I was in ICU, and again, going back to me, this spirit form looking down at my girlfriend, sharing with me information, she would read to me numerology books, because I had requested, when I got out of ICU, to bring me some more advanced numerology books. But today she would say, today we're going to talk about the number 1, and it's ruled by Aries, and it's about leadership. And she began this very basic numerology lesson, 1 through 9. So when I finally got my vision back and I was able to somewhat walk, I had them bring me tons and tons of numerology books. And I was like this, makes sense, makes sense, makes sense, makes sense. It all just, again, downloading that information constantly. Right. And to this day, I know you can't see much of my office, but it looks like my entire house is just efficient and organized, and I'm very fastidious. But my office is very similar to what I experienced on the other side. It's books here and codes over here and a script over here and my fourth book over here and the completion of this book. I'm just like an octopus, doing all kinds of multitasking and downloading so much information all at once, reading emails and making phone calls. And people come over and they say, "Oh my God, are you on drugs?" I said, "No, this is how I do it." So because that's what happens. So much information comes in to me daily, and I'm kind of like, I finally tune in to 102.9, right, and I get the frequency, and it comes in loud and clear, and that's just how I'm able to download information.
Now, the numerology part of it. I mean, seeing these numbers, like what have you pieced together? Like what has it shown you?
That's a great question. Well, so let's talk about this. And for those who are listening in right now, as I know some of you who are seeing these codes all around the planet and have been since 9/11 of September, right? So, the first thing that I began to try to understand was, why am I seeing 222 and 333? Well, those numbers weren't apparent until after 9/11, when consciousness shifted. And so what I began to do, as numerology, I began to look at the numbers 13. Well, if you go overseas and across the pond, obviously the number 13 is good luck. Over here in America, it's bad luck. Right. So I began to understand the pros and cons of the compound numbers. Then I began to study the karmic numbers, like the number 13, like the number 16, like the number 19. Then the master numbers, you go 1 through 9 in numerology. If there's a master number, and because I've been in the film industry for 26 years, some of the people I had worked with, these geniuses, the directors and the cast directors and the actors and the writers. When I was doing the numerology charts, I could see these, numbers that were not basic 1 through 9, but the master numbers like 11 and 22 and 33 and 44. So back to your question, I was learning all these master numbers and compound numbers and karmic numbers, and again, just coming in. So numerology, I didn't know at the time, was the key to my next level of success. And like anything in life that happens, you get one phone call and everything changes for the rest of your life.
Well, how did that change I mean, you worked in the media industry. You can't talk about your experiences there with your coworkers because of the judgment. And how I'm not a big fan of mainstream media as it is.
Nor am I.
But you worked in it. See, But what was the point in your life where that all changed? Where you decided, I'm open about this and I'm going to be who I am and tell people about my experience?
Well, first of all, that didn't happen until 2007. So
right.
Even as a paranormal investigator, I do this.
Kept it quiet.
A kind of double life, because again, here I'm in the news division and media, and I was on the side, trying to study numerology, so I would give free readings to people in the news division and clients and celebrities. And, I was afraid to charge. So, I did this, for a year, just trying to learn the basic numerology. They were all my little guinea pigs. And then they just kept showing up. And, so I worked, long hours. And then I had readings that would come to me. And they just kept showing up. And I would tell them, don't tell your friends. And they just kept showing up. So, and then the biggie started showing up. So I remember I started charging $25. Well, people aren't going to pay me $25 to come listen to me talk about numerology. So what happened, how things changed. You've heard this adage, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Well, right. I kind of took that mantra and just studied, and it took me 7 years to really digest my near-death experience and to really, as far as I'm concerned, to become somewhat good at math, and then I get that phone call, and I kind of digress very quickly here. I was studying to become a special effects makeup artist. This is what was really important. I was a gifted artist, and I'm going to go forward here. I lost that ability as an artist. Oh. I can't paint, can't sculpt, can't carve. I used caricatures. I did it all. I guess when I came back into this new Peter Anthony, my ability as an artist just went out the door, and math kind of just came in. So I began to see my artistic abilities in my hand just, to fade away. Yeah. And so here I am studying math, and then that phone call comes in, and it's from a homicide detective. And he was referred to me by a metaphysical bookstore, and they knew that I was, was a makeup artist and starting to become a special effects makeup artist, and knew that I was gifted at numerology. And that phone call had to do with a case they were working on. At the time, the suspect's son had taken from the victim's home some numerology books and some codes.
Wow.
Written out 222 and 1111, etc., and had this special effects makeup kit that he hid. So I met this homicide detective who didn't believe in any of this. And again, back in the 80s, I mean, what I did
right
in the 80s and 90s, I mean, people like me were kind of like, the circus act. And so I met this guy at Barnes & Noble in a mall before they opened up, and I had to do test the psychic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I gave him information, and I was taken to the crime scene. And what turned out to be what they thought was the victim, in my world, turned out to be the killer. And yes, though the suspect they had indeed did shoot the neighbor, but the reason why he shot him was because he had come on to his son and tried to have, to seduce his son. And his little boy went back to him and told him. Now, add the drama of that his other boy was missing. So this father was a single parent, was raising two boys, and to have all this hit his plate, and he lost
Snapped.
it. He did snap. And so when I showed up on the crime scene, it's almost like the doctors and nurses, the Native American, they all showed up. And no, I'm just kidding. But what happened? These spirits began to show up as soon as I arrived at the crime scene. Now, again, I had never worked on any kind of case before.
Right.
I never worked on a crime. I didn't know anything about a crime scene. I certainly worked on any kind of paranormal show. So I always had to rely on the spirits to talk to me. And they would physically appear to me. Now, when I say physically appear, it's not like they show up like you and I. But, for those who know the spirit world, again, it's a very transparent figure.
Like faces and...
Faces.
Yeah.
I could sometimes get 3/4.
Yeah.
No. And so that's how I began to use this gift that I had and began to communicate with the spirit world. And that's how I began to that one little case I worked on launched my career. And then Sightings contacted me. And the next thing you know, I'm leaving CBS News and I'm becoming a ghost chaser. And again, I had no idea what I was doing. I was winging it. And I think the most tragic thing that I had to experience in the beginning was, as I mentioned before, many of my friends and coworkers were all very critical of me and my near-death experience. So I kept everything very private. And it wasn't until I landed on Sightings when I was working with a forensic team and certainly a wonderful, paranormal investigators, that so many of these other people had out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences. So I kind of was like, oh my God, I found my tribe. And so that's how it all changed for me. And they took me under the wing and showed me what to do. And you may not remember this man by the name of Peter James. He's like, well,
oh yeah, okay. Sightings.
Yes, Peter James was the man who trained me.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, he's passed. That's somebody. I grew up on Sightings. I loved Peter James. I was a kid. I couldn't wait every week for Sightings to be on. It was like the first good paranormal show.
I have to share this story with you because if you're a Peter James fan, you will really appreciate this. Okay, so I was told by I don't know if he's around, but we'll just use the name Chris. So said, Chris, you got to go talk to Peter James, and he's on Sweetser, and he's this, and you have to be there at 9:00 sharp in the morning. Okay. LA, you're never on time. So I think I show up at 9:05, and I'm knocking on his door, and I Love Lucy is playing, and I hear him in there laughing, and I'm like knocking on the door, and I'm looking at my clock, and I guess at 9:07, 9:10, I don't remember what time it was, and he comes to the door and he said, "You're late." I was like, "Sorry." So he had me come back the next day. I never met Peter James in person. Peter James and I communicated through his open front door where he lived, and I was sitting on the porch, and that's how he taught me.
Why?
He didn't want any. He was very private.
Wow.
What I learned from him, which is what to this day I still use anytime I go on a case. He told me, and this is a fascinating story.
Yeah.
He loved I Love Lucy, and he said you need to find a comedy or comedies and this is going to keep you balanced. So he said, because when you go on these paranormal cases, there's so many times you go on these cases, they're so intense, and you need some levity in your life.
Yes.
So to this day, as an investigator, I am addicted to comedies. That's what all I watch on YouTube. Will and Grace, Frasier, you name it. I just watch all those old comedies. Raymond, everybody loves Raymond. That's what I do, and I learned that from Peter, and it was the best gift that anyone could have ever given me.
Well, I was not expecting that as a lessons from Peter James is to find a comedy you like to, tune down from, but it's actually something as a paranormal investigator, me and my wife come home from a long investigation. We've done it and we'd be like, oh my God, it's like a paranormal, we call it the paranormal hangover.
Well,
and
it is.
we end up like wanting to watch like, comedies or something lighthearted, like a half an hour show, like Big Bang Theory or something before we go to bed, just to take our minds off and like get our energy different. Totally right there with you, Peter James. On that.
Well, you know what is it for me? It was like, to this day. I mean, looking back at it, and God bless him. He was already having ill health when I met him, and he suffered severely with asthma, as did I. And so, anytime he went into a sighting, he always had his inhaler with him, and he just suffered terribly. So, as did I. So, so I was very lucky to have someone like him. He took me in. He knew. Jason, he knew that I had a near-death experience by touching my hand.
Just like your friend knew by seeing you, because she had one.
Yes.
Did Peter James have a near-death experience?
I don't know, but he knew. He said he said that I had crossed over, and that this was my greatest gift to communicating with the spirit world. Because again, what I learned from him, when you've had a near-death experience, you've actually gone to the spirit world,
right?
And you come back with that residue, I guess, if you will. And I don't know that this is scientific. I certainly can't say that it is, Jason. But I think that for me, that the spirits can see, almost like infrared. They can see the solar plexus spinning light, energy, and I think they're attracted to that because it rotates like the bullseye.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
And I think that on some level, and again, that's just me and my many years of experience, like all of us, when it's time for us to pass, it is all about that light. And I think there are trapped souls that didn't get a chance to go into the bullseye. I could be way off there, but that's just my speculation.
I think that's a lot of people's speculation on that. Why, when it comes to like ghosts, like actual hauntings, why does this, the worst scene on that always bothers me in investigation. I love getting EVPs, I love electronic voice phenomena, but when I get a child's voice, it bothers the heck out of me as a parent. Even before I was a parent, it bothered the heck out of me. It's like, why would a child be left haunted, trapped somewhere? That's horrible. But it does seem that some people missed their ride, their ticket there.
Well, yeah, and there's something else too. And I go back, and it's very important. Everything is based on energy. If you just understand that as a paranormal investigator, and you working on these cases, so an example, let's say you're working on let's say a grocery store, and you go there, and there's a haunting, and and you do your research, and you discover that this was a brothel, or it was a bank, or a post office, whatever, and there was a murder there. Once that energy has been deposited onto earth ground, that energy does not dissipate or go away until someone like you or I come along and dissipate it and bring it into the energetic form of a spiritual tunnel.
For it to cross over.
Yes.
When I was in my 20s, I've had a lot of paranormal experiences since I was a little kid. I mean, all my life has been weird. And when I was in my 20s, I got into meditation and stuff like that, but I didn't know a lot. And I started to I thought I was having like a brain tumor or something, because I would feel like this swirling at the top of my head, and then it'd be here. And then I felt it, like you said, the solar plexus area. Like it's just like a wheel spinning. And then, of course, getting into it, I found out about chakras. And when I saw that they were spinning wheels, I'm like, oh my God, that's it. That's what I'm experiencing. And
well, so add this to the
weirdest feeling.
Add this to the element, because every year on my clinical death, I go to the ley lines of the energy grids on the planet. So I'll go to Stonehenge, or I'll go to Mount Shasta. I'll go to
living my dream, man.
Maui. I'll go to I went to Canterbury. Every 11/11 until 11/29, I go and I do grid work. And all I do is meditate. I bring my trance music with me, even as I investigate my cases before I go on camera. I bring my my headphones with me and listen to trance music, so that when I go on to work on my cases, I'm already connected.
But just for people to know, yes, that is his dog. It's a comments in the background. That is his dog. Make noise.
I see my dog was jumping up and down.
He's been shaking and rattling. People are like, what's the noise? Somebody got it right.
sorry.
Yes, it is a dog. It's all right. We have dogs. We have cats. Cats are the worst. They get right up in front of the screen and show their butt. That's what usually happens.
Yeah.
Dogs are fine. Anyways, now, we're going to be coming up on a commercial break here. How many, being, doing sightings and all that, but like professionally, how many like cases have you worked on as like when it comes to like homicides and as a psychic detective?
Oh God. I mean, Jason, I mean, think about this. I've been doing this since 1993, easily. So that you think of, sightings. I mean, you should go into my website and look. And there's several things I have done. I think one of my favorite shows I worked on, and there's a body of work that we're all proud of, right?
Yeah.
But this particular is borderline. I got a chance to work with this, and this was a case that I worked on in Manzanar, the Japanese internment camps back in.
Oh, geez, yeah.
But now here's interesting, and I don't know, we're coming into commercial break, so we can lead into this if you want. But I also time travel.
Oh, my favorite subject. Okay.
And so what I had to learn to do. Again, this is Peter, again, we could talk hours about Peter, but all his coaching, all the stuff I was learning with Peter. I mean, it's like I got there, he showed up, do this, and do this. But I had to learn how to work with a production crew over here, the director over here, and work the spirit world over here, and then go back into 1944.
Oh, wow. I mean, Peter James, I always wondered how he did it, on sightings when I'd see him on there. And your story, what's been bugging me this whole last hour is your story. Because I've seen you on a show before, but your whole story of the 80s, the AIDS epidemic, and how you was confused. Like, I swear to God, I've had a guest on, and we've talked about this before. Like, somebody else had a similar near-death experience where they were confused about their condition because they thought they were an AIDS patient, and they were almost left to die. Who else? Rob, Jamie? I had somebody else on here had a similar near-death experience to Peter Anthony. It's been bugging the heck out of me, but it's really similar to yours. Of course, I don't think they had all the numerology. I just can't remember what guest, but maybe it's because I've seen you on these shows. Like I said, when I was a kid, Sightings was one of my favorite shows.
You would then you know what you would know me. Go to my Sightings show. You'll remember some of the shows I did. My very first show in Chicago was a haunted cemetery. And
I know I've seen you on there. Yes.
Yeah, in my younger days. But anyway,
it was my favorite show, so that's why I'm listening to this. I'm like, God, this is like I've heard this. Yeah, you were part of my childhood. Not to make you feel old, but, sorry, but Sightings was like literally one of my top. Yeah, when Sightings ended, I was so mad. Like, that was one of my top favorite shows because I was always a kid that had weird paranormal experiences I couldn't talk to anybody about. Here was an actual show that was really covering it, like In Search Of. Like, I'd watch old reruns with Leonard Nimoy of In Search Of. Like, it was hardly growing up in the 80s and 90s. It wasn't easy to get a lot of these shows. So we're barely covered.
The thing about the show, and I've worked on many shows. I've worked on so many different cases, from the executive director Henry Winkler all the way down to the producers, the segment producers, even the guy that carried all our travel, to wherever we were going. We were one team, and we were one happy family. There was no ego.
Doesn't exist anymore in the paranormal world. So
so as I said, I got on at the most amazing time because Peter was, health, and I was this, the new Peter, and and I was just, as I said, I just kind of blundered my way through, through camera techniques I knew nothing about, and so as I said, I had to, when I showed up at Peter's house, get your pen and pad ready, and he's going to talk quick, and you better get it. And I was like, I listened because. Like you, I was so fascinated by all this because imagine 7 years of being, kind of in your room, and you're working with a corporate world of just so greedy and so not tuned in and wanting to get out of that cage.
Oh, I bet.
They were a welcome to my life.
Well, we do have to go to commercial break here. Sure. We come back, we'll continue this conversation, and we will open up the phone lines as well. Let people call in, share your near-death experience, or if you got questions for Peter, please call in tonight. And Peter, I'd love to talk a little bit more too about some of the cases you've worked on and more of your near-death experience when we come back from the short commercial break.
Conducting an experiment into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself, and the experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
Do you wish for more paranormal and spiritual content? The Paranormal Chronicles magazine is a free digital magazine crammed with the very best in paranormal and spiritual articles and features. No sign-up, no subscription, just free reading and knowledge for you. Read today at www.paranormalchronicles.com/magazine.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Paranation Magazine is a new paranormal magazine based out of Denver, Colorado. Our goal isn't just to give you the best paranormal content out there, but to promote paranormal unity. We're doing this by giving everyone an opportunity to tell their stories and to share experiences. For more information, follow us on Facebook at Paranation Magazine and soon, paranationmag.com.
I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is the extraordinary travels of a young, alone, and broke psychic in the highly anticipated new book from internationally renowned psychic, medium, medical intuitive, and best-selling author Sherry Dillard. Critics have described I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like as an engrossing memoir, an empowering story of how a broken girl came to accept her psychic gift, a refreshing and fun read. I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is available through Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold.
Edgar Allan Poe wrote Spirits of the Dead with a pen dipped in warm blood. You will see the ultimate in terror with this important all-star cast. Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda in Edgar Allan Poe's Spirits of the Dead. Only Poe's demented genius could bring to the screen such horror and evil. Spirits of the Dead stars Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda. Directed by three masters of the cinema, Federico Fellini, Louis Malle, and Roger Vadim. Spirits of the Dead is an adventure in terror beyond your wildest nightmares. Spirits of the Dead in color is rated R.
only have 75 more to go. Okay? What's this one?
It's a couple of wavy lines.
Sorry, this isn't your lucky day.
I know. Wait, I'm getting a little tired of this.
You volunteered, didn't you? We're paying you, aren't we?
Yeah, but I didn't know you were going to be giving me electric shocks. What are you trying to prove here anyway?
I'm studying the effect of negative reinforcement on ESP ability.
The effect? I'll tell you what the effect is. It's pissing me off.
Well, then maybe my theory is correct.
You can keep the $5. I've had it.
I will, mister.
You're listening to Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419. Or by Skype caller ID OOJBland00 or JBland Paranormal Soup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest is Peter Anthony. Like I said, you might have seen him on Sightings. That's where I'm like, God, he seems so familiar because I grew up on that show. Like, literally, Peter James, Peter Anthony, I've seen them do incredible stuff on TV. Leaves an impression. I mean, that, you know, if you remember the show, there was nothing like it at the time. Just going to the haunted places, this is before Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures. This is, Barry Taft, Dr. Peter Taft, I think was on that show that we've had on here, and a friend of mine. I mean, it definitely influenced me quite a bit, and it gave me a place to turn to on TV where I felt things that I was interested in were being discussed, and that's why I do this show today. This is my own Sightings, my place where we can talk about these things with no judgment and come together and share our experiences and learn. And the phone lines are now open for you guys to call in and share your experience. Did you have a near-death experience? I'd love to hear what you experienced. That's why we have Peter on tonight. He saw something that not everybody gets to see, not until they die. But they usually don't get to come back and tell, and it changed him. Numerology, psychic abilities, speaking to the dead. I mean, I don't think everybody that has near-death experience comes back with those abilities, but they definitely come back changed, and we're going to get into more of his story, what he's done as a psychic detective, and take your calls. Let's get back to our guest. Welcome back to the show, Peter.
Thank you.
Now, I want to get to the time travel thing. For sure.
Open Pandora's box, huh?
Yeah. Maybe we should just get into that because I'm fascinated by that. Big fan of time travel. I was just actually recently today, saw Quantum Leap on my Roku channel. I'm like, I want to watch that again. Love time travel. I could watch so many different shows about time travel. But I've heard people having the ability, in a sense, to time travel mentally.
Well,
is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, and there's something that's very important that for those who do this. And again, I'm not familiar with other remote viewers. I only know what I've been able to do. And it was one of those Aunt Clara from Bewitched moments where you asked me to bring you a cow and I brought you a dairy farm. I just kind of came into it. But for me, if an example, like when I was working on Manzanar and I knew I was going out to a location that was just basically, it was leveled. And I knew that I had to find something in my psychic abilities to go back in time. So what I've learned, and I have done for so many years, especially when I work on some very intense cases, everything happens days before I arrive. And I prepare I kind of want to say something to the fact of I use body, mind, and spirit as a way to communicate. So an example, if I'm working on a show, and I've seen this happen throughout my career as an investigator, I could see so many people due to the results of the intensity of the cases. I could see, alcoholism and drug addiction becoming a part of their consciousness. And you can't do that. At least I learned very quickly. These are the things I had to learn to the caffeine, the Diet Cokes, what I ate, acidic food, all those things basically, I looked at myself as a finely tuned automobile engine. And if I was able to really focus on the grid of the body and get my physical aligned with the spirit and the mental, I could go back and do these things. So it really helped me considerably. The other thing too that I do, and this is one of my secrets, but as I said, for years, whenever I would show up and do a walkthrough, I never really liked to show up and do a walkthrough, and then I'd have to sit around and wait, while production, got everything together for hours and hours and hours at a time. So what I learned to do was that when I arrived, and as I got a little bit more named in the industry, that when he shows up, be ready because he's going to be spot on. The ghosts don't have a union. And when you arrive, they're not sitting here drinking coffee and waiting on sound or waiting on lighting or waiting on the plane flying.
Right.
They're not going to sit here and just, it doesn't work that way. And I discovered that whenever I was working on a case, and especially a very intense case, those ghosts showed up at somewhere between 3 and 3:30 the night before. And they would start communicating with me, and in all kinds of different ways. And I knew when I was working on this particular case in Manzanar that I was going to have to really use my abilities to go back into 1944. And what happened, I began to see, and I didn't know that, I'm sure you're familiar with it. When they give you a case, you have your airplane tickets, you have the producer, the director, the sound guy, wherever else, the crew basically, and you show up. So I didn't know much of anything. So when I did show up to Manzanar, all I had was my contact, and I was in the middle of the desert. And before me was nothing but just desert landscape. There was no Manzanar concentration camp or internment camp. There was nothing. So the night before, someone began to communicate with me, and he was in a uniform. And again, going back to that hospital during my near-death experience, it was the ghost that started communicating with me and telling me or giving me bits of information. And if I did my job, meaning I showed up on set completely, as I say, cleansed from head, from the head chakra to the throat chakra, the solar plexus and the base chakra. If all that was aligned, I could travel and go back. And that's important, because many people show up and they're hungover or they're drained or they're worked on another case and they're just exhausted, and working on these cases, it's so draining, especially if there's a murder case involved or there's multiple murder cases involved. So you have to be on your game. And that's what I learned, was to be on my game. So ask me questions. I had to digress, but I want to know how it works for me and how I did it.
Well, so that case there, I mean, what's time travel like? I mean, what do you see? I mean, is it like visual images? I mean, give us the experience you had there.
Well, I think for me, it goes back to going back to that near-death experience of being yanked out of the operating table, and you do actually feel, and I go back, remember I said there was Peter Anthony up here in essence or spirit form, and there's Peter Anthony here in physical form. Well, I had to learn how to work with both the spirit form of Peter Anthony going back in time to the physical form of Peter Anthony talking to the producer or talking to the director or talking to the camera. And it was tough, but I would use trance music, and this guy heard me shout out to him tonight. He would freak out. But I listened to Roman Van Buren. He's this wonderful DJ from I think Berlin or Copenhagen, some of that area through there, and it's kind of dance music. But his music is melodic, and it's very similar to what I heard on the other side. These female vocalists that it's almost like you're having this you're transcending with this female voices all around you, and you feel yourself lifting. And that's what I would do. So when I would get on, before I would go on set, I would listen to my headphones and just go into this meditative state. And once I got into that state, I'd be like this, I had my eyes closed. They would start talking to me, and it was almost like my countdown, which I start with 7 and go all the way to the number 1, and using the number 7 is ruled by the color purple, and the number 6 is yellow, and red is 5, and I would do all these visual colors until I got to the number 1, which was a spinning white light.
Right.
And then once I got into that state of consciousness, I went. So
And then
you feel,
yeah,
you feel like you've been transported back in time, and you actually have. And coming back is difficult because once you land, it's almost like an actor who's worked on a very intense scene. You know, Heath Ledger talked about when he played the Joker that he had to really go take some time away
Right.
because you're so into that character that it's not you. And
Right.
so I learned that this person that was going back in time, you know, I don't know who it was. All I know is that I did it and I did it well. And I would go back, and what happens, your senses, I go back to the wolf, your senses become a lot more acute. You can smell, I mean, just the sound. I mean, I could actually hear, you know, almost like the wings of a grasshopper just clicking in my ear. I could hear the hummingbird, their wings fluttering. When I say I could hear, that's what I'm saying. And my sense of smell, I could smell the sand. I could smell the sweat. I could smell the cologne on an officer that was, a few feet away. I mean, it was just, it's overwhelming because again, you're going back and you are using these senses on such an acute level that you can just, you can explode, your frequency, it seems like. So the time travel for me was intense. It was surreal. And it's almost like once you go back into that time and my feet would land back into 1944, I was there.
It's like you're physically there. You feel like you're physically there.
I feel like I'm physically there because as I say that,
Yeah.
I'm going to go back a split
You're at two
screen here,
places.
okay? I'm
Yeah.
over here talking to camera, and over here I'm talking to a Japanese, boy or girl that has been abused and having a
Right.
conversation with them. And they're in spirit form too, but you're
Right.
going back, you have a spirit form over here and you're going back in time and you actually are having that conversation with the real person back then who you see over here in spirit form. So it's kind of like this multi-screen going on, and you have to be very centered to communicate effectively with all the parties. And
Well,
go ahead.
I've heard from different mediums and that they all have their different methods, and a lot of them seem like this. Some of them have like a stairwell, like guided meditation they do, or going through the colors. Like all of them seem like you have to get yourself to a certain higher vibration to meet them halfway, or meet the spirits halfway.
You just said it. You have to hit a certain higher vibration. Now, here's what I do, and it works well for me. Because I couldn't see for a while when I was recovering, and because I was in a wheelchair and I couldn't walk, once I was able to get my vision back, and once I got out of the wheelchair and was able to walk, and it took me a while to learn how to walk again, but I do this thing called gratitude. And so I think for me, when I show up on set, I get away from everybody and I start going into my higher conscious meditation of what I'm grateful for. And I'm grateful for an example like the segment producer who booked me on this particular show. I'm grateful for the courier that was nice to me, handing off the tickets to me. I'm grateful for the ticket agent who was really nice, who bumped me up in first class. I mean, whatever it was, I go into the arena with gratitude, and then I put my trance music on. And for me, it works, but I am just rocketed to the other world. And if you've taken drugs, and I have, and many of us have, it's almost that euphoria.
Drugs are bad. Okay.
That you experience that when you smoke pot, you get to that, you're smoking pot, you're just there talking with other, and all of a sudden that high kicks in. And then that's what happens with me, but I don't use drugs and I don't smoke and do any of that stuff. I can naturally get high just going into meditation. And when I'm in that state of consciousness, there isn't anything I can't work on. And
You're tapping into something. You're tapping into something else.
I tap into another realm.
Well, we got the phone lines blowing up. We got two people waiting on hold here, so I figure we should go ahead and get. No, that's all right. I'm fascinated. Let's see. I can't see the area code on this. They called on the phone line here. We got somebody on the sideline number. Who do we got?
Hello, Jason. It's me, Zariana.
Hey, Zariana. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, thank you. I have a question for your guest. I had precognition of of a horrible crime that happened, and it did happen. And I had nightmares. Oh, I still have them, but I can't. I probably won't explain it right, but I actually saw the crime.
Yeah, I that
What
happened to me all
happened?
the time. Yeah.
You saw it before it happened,
To the
Ariana?
people.
Yes. Yeah.
Huh?
You saw it before it happened.
Yes, yes. And every year about the anniversary of this crime, I'm still like thrust into this horrible nightmare, and I can't change it, and I've tried to tell them, that obviously they've crossed over. It was tragic what happened, but it still bothers me to this day. And I was wondering if you had any advice for that.
Well, yes, I do actually, because this happens to me all the time. I mean, I can go to Walmart and I can go to the board where you see the missing children, and and I can go there, and I've showed up, and I've actually seen the person that's kidnapped the children physically looking at the board. Well, what do? You can't go in and call the police and say I'm a psychic. We're not in a world that they understand or accept this.
It's not the Minority Report.
Yeah, you can't do that. And so I've had to learn to suffer through all this. And like you, I've had something that happened. I was in my car driving to a meeting in Los Angeles at a film studio, and as I'm going down Fountain, I could hear the cop cars and the sirens coming towards. I didn't see them, but all of a sudden I'm in this car, and this, again going back, I'm actually in the apartment with this woman where there's a break-in and the man is stabbing her, and I'm seeing it like I'm driving in front of my I guess in front of my car, and I pulled over the road because it was so intense and so visual, but it's happened to me all the time. So cut to the chase here. First of all, you need to research this because it's coming to you for a reason. You know that, right? Are you there?
Yes.
Okay. So you need to do your research.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so you need to do your research because something is trying to communicate with you, and you may have information on it. You may be the person like me, and I don't like to use the word ghost whisperer, but sometimes that's exactly what you are. Maybe these spirits are trying to communicate with you, and the thing that happens for so many of us who've had near-death experiences, there's this thing called peace, and the spirit is lingering, and they're tapping into you. They've tapped into your radio station, and they want to communicate with you. So your job as a medium, or a precog, is that you've got to figure out what's going on, and here's what I'm going to ask you to do. You need to ask, how may I help? And don't get freaked out when they show up and tell you what to do. Because this is where most people, they ask, and I tell them this, and they do it, and they show, oh my God, they showed up, and they're on my foot, and I just freaked out. This is why orbs, and this is why the shadows and all these things disappear, because we operate from the left and the right brain consciousness, and when we see something from the right side of the brain, our left brain goes, that I'm not seeing that. We logically explain it away,
right?
And then all of a sudden, what we saw, what we think we're seeing, is now logically explained that I didn't see it. It's trying to communicate with you, and then will continue until you solve it. So you got to, in my opinion, try your very best to figure out why, who it is, and what they want, and how you can help. So we go back to who it is, why, how, and when did it happen? And you've got to pull it together, and maybe they're trying to communicate with you. I have ghosts come all the time and communicate with me. I feel like Whoopi Goldberg in that movie Ghost. They just show up. I've had, before I went on your show and we started communicating back and forth, Jason, this past week, I don't know why, I have running kids at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm their ghost, running on my condo roof, back and forth playing.
What? Wow.
So it just, they show up. I come home. I hear marbles. I'd worked on a case I can't say the name because his owner freaks out every time I talk about his store. But I come home and I can be watching TV and I hear marbles on my floor, like someone just dropping marbles one at a time. So they're trying to communicate with you. What is your name again, young lady?
Azariana.
Variana. They're trying to communicate with you. So tonight, when you go to bed, I'm going to give you a little meditation. Just say, tonight I ask for peace. Tonight I ask for peace. Tonight I ask for peace. And how may I be of service to help you? And see what happens. And don't freak out and don't go into place of, did I really see it? Did it happen to me? Just allow it.
Okay.
I got one question for you, Ziriana. Is there any aspect of this crime that is unsolved?
Yes.
Or unrevealed to the public?
Well, some of the facts that were released were, I know a little bit more than.
That's what I was wondering. It's like that could be what's
What
bothering
was
you. There's
publicized.
information you have that they're trying to get to you that's not known to the public. Yeah, like I said, you got to research it.
Well, you also have an emotional attachment to it, and that's where you
Mhm.
have to detach. You have to become third person, because it is overwhelming. This, again, it's something I had to learn to do. Every time I worked on a case, I would go home and I was just knackered out. So you've got to learn how to, you need to figure out how to download and how to upgrade at the same time. So the quieter you are and the more you ask for information when you're in a quiet state of consciousness, the more you upgrade the grids on the body and you're able to receive information. And they will communicate with you. So allow that to happen. And don't get, so what we do, we get emotionally attached to me, seeing the knife and the woman screaming and the police are over here. And, it's almost like watching that critical point in the movie. You're just, oh, come on, hurry, hurry, hurry. You can't, I could go into a whole complication of how this all works, but I don't have time for that tonight. But it's another whole ball game here about reincarnation.
Oh, it's so fascinating. Well,
Yeah.
Ziriana, thank you so much for calling in and sharing tonight.
Thank you, and I will try that tonight. Thank you.
All right, have a good night,
Thank
Ziriana.
you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
We got another person waiting on hold. Hold on in there. That's Zach. I'll have Zach just hang in there. We got a question from the chat room. I don't know if you've looked into anything on the alien side of things, but this person in the chat room, Haunted History, says, if you're a fan of... Oh, no, wait. This is his other question. Here we go. I would like to still know if he has looked into the binary code and if there's ever looked into the code received by Jim Pennison of the Rendlesham Forest incident.
The 000s?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's time travel.
Yeah.
According to him.
Part of, and if you read my bio on my website, that was one of the first codes I was seeing was the 00.00.0.0.111.111.111.1.
Binary.
Yeah. And, I have learned that this whole world, this galaxy that we live in, it's all connected as one. Whether they're aliens, whether they're spirits, whether they're walk-ins, whether they're Nordic angels, whatever they are, the Anunnaki.
Walk-ins.
It's all one. And I think what I like about what you've done, Jason, and you talk about your sightings, I'm humbled and grateful that I'm on your show because in the 90s or even up to 2007, I was so scorned and so made fun of, because I kept this very secret. And I got busted, in 2007. My boss came to me. She said, "I just saw you on television, and they say that you're running around as a ghost chaser." And I'm like, and was up for my renegotiation.
Oh dear God!
And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give you a 1 year's resignation. I said, yes, I'm going to write a book, and and I said, I'll find you somebody to replace me. And I walked out, and I thought, I'm not going to live in two worlds ever again like that. I just couldn't do that.
I wouldn't want to live in that world, the media world like that. Yeah, I cut my cable a couple of years ago. I can't stand news media or media in its sense, and how bad Hollywood gets it when it comes to the paranormal. All that stuff drives me nuts.
Yeah,
drives me nuts. People are like, "Oh, when'd you make your show big time?" Like, my show only gets big time if I grow my audience and I grow naturally. I don't think I could ever sign on to anything big corporate collaborative media thing because I can't stand the control and the no.
Yeah, I so agree to that, and that's why I said I thank you for letting me be a part of your show because I go back to my history. I went on trash TV and no one told me. The debunkers. I didn't know what that was. I didn't have an agent at the time, and so as I said, so for me having someone like you to interview me and know their subject, because you ask the right questions, and that makes a great interview. And so, you know, if one person tonight tunes in and gets something tonight, then you and I have shifted consciousness, and I'm grateful for that.
Oh, I love that aspect of it. Zach, I'm coming to your phone call, but hold on there, Zach. He's always got really good questions.
Come on
But
in, Zach.
we'll get to you in just a second, Zach. The reason I find you so interesting, especially that you got to talk to Peter James, and like he's like your Yoda is what I picture. They get to train you, you know. Is Peter, I've had, like I said, a really weird life, a lot of weird experiences, a lot of psychic experiences, and I talk about them on the show all the time. Maybe too much, but but you know. Well, I love hearing aspects of what it is from your personal experience, how it works for you, because I became a believer that people can get this information when I was early 20s. I mean, I think I was always a believer before that. I mean, I would watch Peter James. I mean, the thing I would always talk about Peter James is when he would, remember the Queen Mary? When you could hear
was
the little
supposed
kid's
to work
voice.
on that case.
Oh, my God. That was such
And I
incredible
turned it down.
footage. Well, there's such incredible footage because Peter James is like talking to a child ghost you can hear. You know, I love that stuff because I had experienced it ever since I was a little kid. I had seen a dead friend that died when she was 5 years old. We were 5 in kindergarten. She died in a car wreck. I saw her. I had seen a green floating head with my cousin. We both saw it. I mean, I talked to my dead unborn sister. You know, I mean, all this stuff. When I was in my 20s, my wife would take me to places, sometimes not tell me it was haunted, just to see if I would know, like a test. And she did this to me once. Her girlfriend had a new boyfriend, and I guess he was telling her it was all haunted and weird stuff. So they brought me over just to meet the new boyfriend. I didn't know. And we walk into the door, and I said, oh, yeah, there's something here. She goes, oh, he knows. Because it's always a feeling. And guess where that feeling's at?
Do you know
here.
why I agreed to go on your show? When you and I were corresponding, you know, through our contact, and you sent me your information, I noticed on one of your telephone numbers was the number 444.
That's my phone number, randomly given to me.
Yeah. And so when I saw that, I thought, gotta do it. Because the 444 for me comes as communication from the other side that's saying, it's confirmation. So that's why I did
interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I got that. That was my first random phone number given to me by this thing sideline. That's weird. But I was to say is I was given a photograph. Once the gig was up, they were telling me they had this haunted. The owner of the place gave me this photograph from an album of books, photo album that was left behind by the family. And it was of a deceased person in a coffin. I had no name, no knowledge of who he was. But I spit out his first name, not trying. It just happened. And then they asked me to try to get his last name, and I was like hearing it in my head, Eiler. I'm like, it's something like Eiler, like it's Eisler. So like, boom, I knew that. And then next thing you know, in my mind, in my head, just a deep knowing, I knew this guy was a veteran. He hid his old World War II stuff in the house, and he was an abusive alcoholic to his family, and that's why they left all this stuff. They had a hatred for their father. I knew all this. Like, it was just instant knowing. It's the only time like that I've had this experience in my life. I mean, I have psychic stuff, like, all the time. It still happens, but this is like the first, like, out of nowhere, direct knowing. No way I could have this detailed information, because later on, the girlfriend actually found the World War II stuff hidden behind a panel. Just like I said, it was somewhere in that house. She kept looking for 2 weeks. You know, I swear I had that experience just because later on in the future, I'd be doing this show. You know, I'd be being a paranormal investigator, because it convinced me what you can do and everybody else I've had on the show is completely real, because I'm a Gnostic in sense. I'm spiritual Gnostic. I believe in another side. I've had enough experiences to know there's something more.
Yes.
But I question everything in my mind. I have questions for everything. And if I hadn't had that experience, I'd be sitting there go, sure. You know, I'll admit it. I'd be
but
probably
you've been
really
shown
skeptical.
All this stuff for a reason, Jason.
Exactly.
As I said, for me, I had to learn that, because I went kicking and screaming. I didn't want this responsibility.
Right.
I didn't. You know, I mean, as I said, you know, going down Fountain and seeing this murder take place with this young woman, it's a lot to have on your shoulders. And I said, there are many things that I have experienced that, like you, the just, you know, what do you do with this? Because you can't have normal conversations with people who are unconscious or not tuned into this kind of stuff, you know. So you kind of stay with these moments. It just doesn't work.
They look at you like
back either, because once you've tapped into this type of thinking, you keep advancing. So there's no turning back.
Yeah, for me, there's no turning back since I was a little kid and I saw green floating head with my cousin. From then on, no, seriously, you know, like I always say, the green floating head. That's why I have the green lava background. As green's like my paranormal color, because I saw this green floating head, and my cousin saw it with me. We're both like 5 years old. Ever since then, I was like convinced all this stuff could be real. Everything's open, because everybody told me that there can be no such thing as a green floating head, but I saw it, so screw you. It's all any of this stuff could be possible. All right, we got Zach on the line. Let's get to him. He's been waiting. How you doing tonight, Zach? Thanks for holding.
I'm doing pretty good, man. How you doing?
Doing great.
All right, so I have two questions. I'll keep them nice and short. Hey, Peter, it's very nice to meet you, sir.
My pleasure, Mr. Zach.
My first question goes back to the time travel. So, what is the average time span that you spent communicating with spirits on the other side in their own timeline? And when you've done this, have the spirits that you've communicated with given acknowledgement of all the events that are going on your side of the channel?
Okay, that's a loaded question. I'm going to tackle the obvious question in terms of a time continuum. I couldn't tell you how long I was there because, again, I'm taping and taping and taping and taping, and you have to understand how it works in our world. You know, when we're, okay, do this again and lighting this and do that and go back, pick up the shot, and we're going to do this. And now the sun is going down. We need to go back here. And so I couldn't tell you. Now, back to your number two question. So I'll use Manzanar and go into my website, theaccidentalprophet.com, and go to Borderline and watch this particular thing I did on the concentration camp. While I am going back in time, and I have gone to this particular reason for why this place was haunted, I am saying back then, as I'm going back in 1944, I am talking to a man who was a soldier who fired the shot that killed the first Japanese citizen, American citizen. And I'm talking to him. Now, in the background over here, as I'm walking and doing my walk and talk, I could hear a man crying over here. I couldn't understand where the crying was coming from. And we finished my, I guess, the taping. And I stopped, and I was just, it was almost like I was just drunk or just inebriated because I was so exhausted from doing this. And the director was great. He said, okay, just take some time. What I didn't know that the man that was crying was the actual man who shot the pistol in 1944. And his penance, as far as he was concerned, because of what had happened then, because he was the one that basically created the massacre, in his mind, I guess, of guilt was that in order for him to find some kind of peace to what he did, he decided after he retired to go there and be the security guard and watch over the place.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I remember this.
And it
so
was
familiar.
I
think I've seen this.
When I finished, came up, and this is a man in a security uniform.
Yeah.
And you'll see him on the interview, and I'm getting goosebumps because it'll make me emotional.
Yeah.
But he comes up to me, Zach, and cries in my arm like a baby and said, "Thank you." So in his world, I don't remember what I said, but he felt that he was at least honored to some degree of why these hauntings were taking place. And I guess I was able to help him solve his guilt and his many years of beating himself up. And so it was a win-win situation. So you never know. I always say words are very important. They either hurt or they can heal or harm. And whatever I said to him seemed to heal him for whatever pain and guilt he felt about that particular time in history. It was just very odd. So back to your original question, Zach, I can't identify or tell you how it works because I don't know how that works in terms of trying to get to the logic, because that's how it works in my head. But what I can say to you is, if it was 30 minutes or 20 minutes or however long, I think the most difficult thing for me is when I do come back, and sometimes I need to take an hour just to kind of chill before I go and tape again because I have to go back. And it basically takes a chunk out of you when you come back every time. It's almost like your electrolytes are just gone.
That's always what we describe after investigations. It's like your electrolytes are gone. That's what we always say.
Yeah,
like we have to rehydrate.
I get shake. Also, when I work on murder cases, and after I finish, I vomit.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, I don't know why it happens. It just happens. I get the dry heaves, and especially if they're very intense. So, Zach, can I ask you something? Does that help you somewhat? I know I didn't answer the way you wanted it to, but it was the information that I needed to share with you.
Oh, it was definitely the answer though that, that it wasn't the answer that I say this. I basically go in asking the question, and I like to hear your response and all that.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
you definitely answered my question way more than that, man. So I do appreciate you doing
Oh,
that for
well,
me.
you're so welcome. I know sometimes because this is such a complicated subject, and I've done so many different shows, and sometimes I've done shows where I have 5 minutes to talk, and they ask you a question that is so loaded it would take you forever, and I really try to give as much information as possible because it's not an easy question, but it's a great question.
Yeah.
It's an amazing question, and thank you for asking.
Well, thank you, Zach. You always have
Yeah.
great questions.
If I may, I do have one more quick
No, go
question,
for it, man.
Peter.
Sure, go ahead.
So when you mentioned comedies, and I love comedy very much. I'm very much deep into it. My question to you is, like, when you're getting back to center and all this, from the comedies that you mentioned, they're pretty like mainstream. Some of them can be clean cut comedy.
Yeah.
My question to you is, does a more like clean cut comedy, does that elevate somebody more back to a center? Because I always go back to Walking Phoenix and the Joker. He said, comedy is subjective. And like for me, for example, I mean, Rob's met me in person. I'm kind of like the, dirty, politically incorrect kind of humor. That's what I gravitate to. But I also, I do the same thing like at my day job, because it can get very stressful, is that I'll play stand-up comedy just to listen to it.
I say if
It'll
it makes you
help me.
laugh, it doesn't matter if it's a dirty joke or not.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah,
I have
so
a
that-
very
that-
odd sense of humor, and anything that makes me laugh elevates my consciousness and elevates my spirit. And that's how I do it. Is mine the right way to do it? No, but it's what Peter shared with me, and I thought, well, as far as I was concerned, he was the king of the kings of the kings, and I thought, you
Right.
know what? If it works for him, it's going to work for me, and it did.
The questions I had, Peter, it was such a pleasure meeting you, man. I grew up over on Sightings. I love that show very much, and it was such an honor to meet you.
There's nothing like it at its time. Nothing at all.
There was, and I don't, in every format that you look at, Sightings was the blueprint for all.
Exactly.
Gibbons,
Well, thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Zach. Great questions.
All right, everybody. You have a good night. All right.
You too. Over the years of doing this show, this 6 years now I've been doing it, I've had a number of people involved in Sightings. Like I said, Barry Taft that was on here, the Pickmans from the Sally House. That show just affected me so much. And now I feel like I have another honorary person, part of Sightings, that's been on the show. It's so awesome.
Well, you know what made the show so amazing, as I said, because from the top all the way down to to the janitor, there was no ego. But the thing that really made it, and why it was called Sightings, the segment producers, when they worked on an actual sighting, they did everything in their power to make sure that the show or that the sighting itself or the haunting was legit.
Right.
And so
you felt it too.
You knew when you showed up, and when they brought in Peter or they brought in me, the other Peter, they knew that, as I said, once I got my game down, as they called me One Take Annie. And when One Take Annie showed up, you better be on your game. Because I got there and I said, well, I'm not waiting here for this. I'm waiting. You get someone with the microphone and you start taping me now because the ghosts are here now. And especially at nighttime when they showed up in troops, a group of ghosts showing up. An example, I worked on a Civil War battle, that just had too many working parts I had to digest. So here they are, all these men in Civil War uniforms in my house. So, I had to. When I showed up and there they were in the field, I had to quickly, address all their concerns and their issues. So, and I don't have time for someone, well, I'm going to take my break. It just didn't work that way for me. So, I once I show up, I'm ready to work.
Well, that's what was great about Sightings. It had not live because the show was all filmed and edited, but it had these moments in it that were you're seeing the paranormal happen. Like I said, I mentioned the Sally House. You remember them getting scratched live when they were recording it? Peter James at the Queen Mary with the child's voice down in the pool area under the pool. Talking to them. These were
I know, because let me tell you,
so special moments.
That scratch that you're talking about.
Yeah.
When I was landing on Sightings, the producer said to me, I want you to take this and watch this. And if you can't deal with this, then we don't need you. So don't even bother. So and this is the truth. I never watched it. I didn't want to. I thought I want to go in, and I thought, I have waited this long to be in my own tribe, and if I see something here that, number one, I was thinking maybe this is all fake, and I thought if it's fake, then I'm like, oh gosh, I'm not going to like this, and So I'd never watched until after I booked Chicago. And then I thought, I'm glad I didn't watch it. And of course, later on in my career, I had something very similar that happened to me while we were filming. Yes, with children.
And scratches too?
Oh, beyond scratches.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean that captured my imagination when they were showing Tony and he's like getting like literally on camera.
On camera, yes.
Scratch, that's like, people are like, oh, it's fake. You never had that feeling. Like Sightings really tried to like put the integrity in it, and now all these years ago, I feel verified with that, being able to talk to the Pickmans and Barry Taff, and the people that have been on that show, how seriously they took things and how real it really was. It literally was the forefront of paranormal. Nowadays, I don't, honestly, just between us here, I guess everybody on the show, I don't trust anything I see on TV when it comes to paranormal shows. I really don't watch them anymore because I've learned too much about
very
how
rarely do
they
I
work
on any of the shows. I had worked on my last show, and I no, I won't tell you who it is, but I thought, I just can't do this anymore because it needs to be real. It needs to be authentic. Mm-hmm. Because you have to understand, Sightings was my meter stick. This is where, I started with the Calvin Klein's, that kind of mentality.
The gold standard.
The gold standard, and that's where things were for me. So my standard, I had to elevate to much higher. And when I went on to a major show and everything was just was not authentic, I said, I can't do this.
And it's just a feeling to it. Maybe it's my own psychic knowledge or whatever, but I have like an inner knowledge of like, yeah, BS.
Yes.
There's the Gnostic in me or whatever. But like when I was a kid, when it was a Sightings, maybe because I was a kid, but they made me feel this is real. They are taking this very seriously. It didn't seem scripted. Like Peter James' moment in that, none of that seemed scripted. And I've had
you know what? That's the thing too. They
fake.
said to us, Jason, because I remember when I was being interviewed.
Yeah.
I said, look, you guys, I have no on-camera experience. I have none. I don't know what I'm doing. I've been, in the news division, behind scenes, in a room, and in the green room, saying yes and no all my life, my career. So for me to go on,
you're gonna tell Dan Rather no.
Yeah. Yes. But so anyway, so as I said, for me, my whole world changed. Everything changed with Sightings. Everything changed with that homicide detective. I mean, everything for me, like I said, that one phone call came in, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I was rocketed out of into a new world, and I haven't stopped since.
Well, speaking of that, you talk about how the homicide detective. You've done other cases. I always say, for cycles to give readings for people and connect with loved ones. That's great. That's great. But when you take on, and I had a little bit of experience in law enforcement. So I wanted to be a cop. I was technically a cop for about 5 months and said, nope, screw this. I'm glad with that decision lately. But knowing what I know from law enforcement and that it's, when you take on being a psychic detective, working on a homicide case, a lot of the times cold cases, sometimes not. This is a serious matter, and you're dealing with some of the most skeptical people when it, when it comes to police officers on this too.
Yeah,
it's not a fun job.
Yeah, I can tell you this. As I'm finishing up my next book, The Accidental Prophet, I am actually going to thank the detectives and the police officers and the segment producers that helped me launch my career, because so oftentimes when I was working on a case, when you're talking to the first responding officer, or you're talking to the homicide detective that's been on, who's just jaded from life.
They have.
One of the cases
I
worked, I worked on one case, and there was, a group of police officers who were just making fun of me while I was actually investigating a shed.
Yeah.
And I could look out, and I'll go back to this too. I hear thoughts.
Right.
So it's not like what they were saying, even though I was inside of a shed and they were outside away from me. I knew, even to this day, I can hear people's thoughts, and I learned something from a very smart, intuitive. She said, "Just play stupid, Peter, because you're one step ahead of them." And so I've just been sometimes I just act like I'm just from the poor South, and I just don't know what's going on here, and I just move past it, because as you and I know truth, and these conversations that you and I have and what we do, I think is very important, because what we are doing on some level, we are educating. We're trying to take thousands of years of education, whether it's religion or whether it's just even politics for that matter, and we're trying to bring in new information, because that's exactly where we are. And I think it has to, I think why near-death experiences have become such a popular subject, because we have given up on our leaders and our teachers and our
no
politicians. And people are looking for us because supposedly we've crossed the other side as far as they're concerned, and we have information. And I think it's important that people like me and other near-death experiences, that we come back with authentic information, that helps them to overcome, because so oftentimes so many people want to share their stories, but they can't because of their job or because of their relationship or whatever. So I give them freedom.
That's why I do this show. I mean, it's exactly why I wanted to start doing the show. I had a very dark experience when I was 17 and to 18, what I call a shadow person experience, or Hat Man, that drove me to the brink. I mean, it could have destroyed me. This thing was so negative, and I'm still to this day trying to grasp it. And it has maybe an alien connection. I don't know. All of it's very complicated.
I'm going to go. That's very important. Thank you, because I'm writing about this in my next book, The Shadow People. The shadows are consciousness.
Glad I brought it up.
And we go back to the energy grid, and when my next book is out, I want to come on your show. We're going to talk about the shadow people, and the energy grids, and the crime scenes, and why these shadow people show up. You
said crime scenes?
Yeah, crime scenes.
There's a connection to this?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. We got to get into this. Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but we'll do this another time, because it takes us a whole down another pathway to rabbit hole, and then we can.
You got the goosebumps on my arms right now from when you mentioned crime scenes.
Because I am writing my third chapter in the Excellent Prophet deals with the shadow people and the shadows, and I'm relating it back to the riots of Los Angeles and why and what happened. I still see shadows even on the television screen. I can walk into, in fact, if you go into my website and scroll to some of my videos and go to PSP and watch a pilot that I worked on, if you get all the way to almost the very end and no one sees it, you will see a shadow person walking across screen. We didn't see this until almost a year later. No one saw it.
Wow.
You'll see it's a priest, shadow form, walking across behind me as I'm finishing up, the closing statement. It's wild.
Well, what I dealt with, I didn't feel like it's the human spirit of any kind. Like, it was something alien to me. But the reason that you perked my interest, and another show for this is a whole other rabbit hole, but where I encountered this thing or picked this thing up was at a place I didn't know at the time. A number of people had died, hit by a train, and all of them were very mysterious why they died there on those train tracks in that spot. And for some reason, this shadow being hung out there. And I've been trying to deal with understanding
because it's
the
math.
whole thing.
It's all related to math. And let me explain how this works. And then we can do this another show.
Yeah.
So an example, I show up on a crime scene, and the address is 1600. Let's say we'll call it Bland Street, okay? And so I show up. Well, I automatically know 1600. 1 and 6 in numerology is a 16-7. That relates to the falling tower, okay?
In the tarot.
The falling tower. You already familiar with the falling tower?
Yeah.
And the tarot, right?
Yeah.
So if you do your research on the falling tower. So then I have to do the numerology in the first responding officer. Well, he has a full name, right? And he has a birthday, right? This is how I was solving all the crime, because everything, if you understand, from my near-death experience, everything is connected. And what happens is simply this, Jason. When I was on the other side experiencing my near-death experience, or my life review, everything that I saw was connected. So look at this way. You are the star of your life. Got it? Every person you come in contact with is a day player, is an extra, is a main co-star. Could be anything in your particular movie, right? And those extras. So we go back to the Titanic or the Lord of the Rings. What good would the Titanic or the Lord of the Rings be without those extras running up and down the ship as the ship is just breaking in two? What good would those extras be without the fight scenes of the Lord of the Rings? What I'm trying to bring you down to is understand that when you go out into the world today, that everybody that is in your vision is a part of your reincarnation thread, and they have chosen to come back with you as day players, as extras, as co-stars, as peripheral background. And I say to everybody, I don't care if it's the CVS cashier, whether you're the flight attendant, you're on cable, everybody that you're in contact with is a part of your consciousness. And the more and more you elevate your consciousness, and the more you come from a place of kindness, the more evolved you become by downloading your kindness and accepting this whole realm of just being a good, decent person, the more comes to you, and you'll begin to communicate that the person that was in the park you thought was homeless becomes the person who becomes the main part of your life for 6 months, which I experienced this last year during COVID, who would read to me the news, and I never knew that this person was a walk-in until the very end.
Like a walk-in, like from another dimension?
Yes.
Oh my God! Ooh, you're getting on my favorite subjects tonight. Oh my God, I've been fascinated with that.
So much happened to me, and so many.
Yes.
Interviews,
oh my God.
People don't want to go down these rabbit holes because.
Oh, I do.
They keep this a very narrow perspective, and I think, well, I am such a vault of information. Use me correctly.
Well, you know, that's what I'm saying. The paranormal is not just one thing. That's why I call it paranormal soup. It's all connected. Aliens, Bigfoot, you know, ghosts, you know, dogmen, shadow people. There's like this universal paranormal.
All these things. You know, my third book is called A Man from Brussels. Takes you back to Adolf Hitler. And I don't know if
I was just thinking about Hitler. That's weird.
Yeah, but he basically, if you do his research, and I've done a lot because this book is important to me. This is the one I really want to write. He captured 5 psychics. They were Nordic angels.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Virile Society back in 1940 and do the research on, her name was Maria. I can't remember. I cannot pronounce.
Very beautiful blonde woman you're talking about.
She looks like Kim Novak.
Oh, she's gorgeous. Yeah.
Like 6'3", all right?
Oh, yeah.
The Nordic angels. The Nordic angels are always blonde, blue-eyed, very tall, and whenever they appear in your life, everything goes into a pause mode. Time stops. Everything is soundless. And my book is based upon the Nordic angels in the very beginning of Keymaster, and takes you all the way through from the 80s up before my near-death experience, and the second book, Daxonal Prophet, takes you all the way into the paranormal world. And the third book takes you back to Adolf Hitler from 1944, the bombing of Berlin, all the way to the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and why all this comes together as one paranormal event.
I can't think of her name, but it's weird that she's the one that you bring up because
Maria
I've always had
was her name.
Maria, yeah, I've stared at her picture.
Isn't she beautiful?
Oh my God, like. Too bad you're involved with Nazis, but God,
no.
like I'm just sucked
into
you.
About this woman, they said that no one knew if she was friend or foe.
Right.
She was captured, and she had to, if I understand this correctly, and I'm doing my research, I'm still finding my information. My main source just died not too long ago with all my Berlin history.
Yeah.
But she was captured, and in order to keep her sisters alive, she had to play Hitler's game.
Mm.
So she's responsible for, and you know, like Hitler, she disappeared. She and her 4 other, her group is all disappeared. No one knows what happened to them.
That's really interesting. I mean, you get into the Thal Society, the Virile Society during the rise of the Nazis and during the Nazi regime, and like what was going on there behind the scenes and the occultism and all these different ideas that were going around and
numerology too.
Numerology, oh yeah.
All their codes, and the 000s. All these codes that were going back then, and the 222s and the 333s that no one even knew about. Everything's been hushed for so long, and that's why I think what you're doing here. The more you tap into, you know, an example, guests like me and other guests who bring you information, the more we raise consciousness. Because I think, you know, the truth is out there. We just need to hear it. And you know, at this stage of the game in my life, I don't care what people have to say. Is that I get up
That's
every
where
morning,
I'm at.
and I like it with the email delete. You know, and it's just, I don't care anymore.
Nope. Why should we? Why should we?
know,
Either
it
they're
just
going to
doesn't
wake up
matter,
or they
you know.
don't.
I'd rather connect with someone like you and go 1,000 days and then go to the next, you know, connection. So I'm just grateful.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful to have you on the show. And we got as time goes by so fast. We got about a half an hour left. We got to go to our last commercial break. Phone lines are still open, guys. You can call in with your questions or your experience. I'd love to hear if you've had a near-death experience, what you went through. Compare notes, get Peter Anthony's take on it. Please call in. We'll be back after this short commercial break.
Intercepted a transmission of unknown origin.
Transmission? Out here?
SOS.
Human.
Unknown.
Alien. Certificate X. Exclusive engagement at the Odeon Leicester Square. Now.
Any systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated. I don't want to hear all this.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
If you are interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal and want to hear from leading researchers in the field, join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium, live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDeath.net.
This is an APAC studio presentation.
Hi, I'm Barry, owner-operator of Barry's Barometer Barn. Lately, I bet you've been lying awake at night asking yourself, how many barometers do I really need? Well, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we think you need more than one. Otherwise, we're gonna go out of business. Remember, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we don't know the meaning of high-pressure sales. Come on, folks, buy another barometer. I'm trying to put my kids through college, I've got a family to support, and a secret mistress who isn't cheap.
Visit Barry's Barometer Barn, 000 Storm Drive. Come on, folks, buy a barometer. I'm Barry's older brother, Larry, and every time one of you people walk past the store without coming in, Barry beats me.
This has been a presentation from Tim Morgan's APAC Studio. For more almost professional amateur comic studio content, visit the APAC YouTube channel. Search APAC 2002. That's APAC 2002 on YouTube.
When Alex Gardner is asleep, he has an extraordinary gift. The government wants it, the scientists want it, but to keep it may cost him his life. It might be better if Alex didn't sleep at all, but he cannot resist entering the dreamscape. Can you? See Dreamscape in the West End and all over London now. Certificate 15. It takes an extraordinary adventurer to enter the dreamscape.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
The answer to the ultimate question of life
the universe and everything is $42. Yes, I thought it over quite thoroughly. It is, it's 42. It would have been simpler, of course, to have known what the actual question was.
But it was the question. The ultimate question. Of everything.
That's not a question. Only when you know the question will you know what the answer means.
Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419. Or by Skype caller ID 00JBland00 or JBland Paranormal Soup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest is Peter Anthony. You might have known him from Sightings. He's author of Keymaster and Miracle Dog, and he's got an upcoming book, The Accidental Prophet. We're talking about all things weird and unusual here, going down a lot of different rabbit holes, and I love it. I definitely got to get to this walk-in story because you know me, I'm super fascinated by that. It's another subject is walk-ins from another universe, dimension. I believe they're here. People disappear and appear in other universes. That's something I'm fascinated with completely, so I got to get into that. But the phone lines are open. You can call into the show. Tell us about your experience. Have you had a near-death experience? Have you met somebody you believe was a walk-in? I want to hear that. I think people have all kinds of these experiences, and the only way we're going to put the pieces together is we come on shows like mine and talk about it. Openness, no judgment, all just relating our experiences to a world and a universe we're still trying to grasp and understand. That's why I do this show. That's why I have great guests on like Peter Anthony. So let's go ahead and get right back into it. So yes, Peter, I want to know about this experience you had with this woman. You said just this last year during the lockdown?
Yeah. I went on a show in New Zealand, and my European book tour was canceled, obviously, due to COVID. And because it was a political year, a presidential year, and so many of these shows were asking me as a psychic, where things were going.
God.
Oh, God. And I'm not... my whole thing about politics and where we are collectively in terms of our leaders is not a favorite place I'd like to talk about. But anyway, fast forward to the punch. So my thing is, I go out every morning just to do my gratitude thing. And I said, okay, so provide the people, the place, and situations. And my job is just to show up and to be aware, right? That's how I do it.
Right.
So COVID, gym shut down, California shut down. I get a bicycle. I'm riding 20 miles a day. I'm going to a park. I'm doing sit-ups. And I'm having this conversation with this blonde, blue-eyed woman. And I'm doing my crunches and sit-ups, and she's sitting there, and she has a radio on, and she's talking to me, and she's, what's your name? I said, my name is Peter. And we just had kind of like just a very introduction conversation. At the very end of my push-up, she goes, well, what are you doing? And I said, I'm trying to get ready because I'm, getting ready to do a lot of different TV shows and radio shows, and I'm trying to lose some weight. And we started that way, and what kind of shows? And I told her, and then she said, anyway, fast forward to the punch. So she said, well, you know what? She said, I know you don't like the talking heads, and I don't either. And she said, I'll tell you what, so I'll meet you tomorrow, and I'll just, tell you what I think's going on. Well, for 6 months that I was on this Zoom, book tour all throughout the different parts of the world, her name was Barbara. I gave her the name Barbara. Barbara would show up, and she would read to me while I'm doing my sit-ups and my pull-ups and chin-ups and all that, all the news that she thought was going on that I should be able to discuss. And she became my talking head, my pundit. And we laughed and we joked and we carried on so much. And literally this whole conversation kind of just went on for 6 months. My last interview for the year, which was this October 2020, I finished up and she was there at the park. And she didn't seem the same. She seemed kind of preoccupied, we'll say.
Yeah.
Anyway, blah, blah, fast forward to the bunch. So I said, well, Barbara, thank you so much. I said, I'm finishing up my tour. And I said, and it looks like California might open up again. So I just want to say thank you so much. And this is what she said to me, it's our job to be kind and wonderful to people, and I really thank you for doing that with me. And I said, well, Barbara, I understand. Thank you. You've just been an absolute doll. And I said, why are you down? And I said, you seem very preoccupied. Oh, shit, I've got to go to the homeless shelter, and I've got to take care of someone there. I said, well, who do you need to take care of? Oh, just someone who needs my help. And I was like, oh. And I said, so do you live there? She said, well, I've been staying there. And she said, my job is to go over there and to make people feel, inspired. And I was like, well, this is kind of interesting. So anyway, it never dawned on me to ask her if she was homeless.
Yeah.
She never presented herself as homeless, but yet she was going to the shelter, and that's where she was staying. She never asked for money, never asked for anything. So as she was leaving, she said to me, I really, really thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. She said, for the last 6 months, you're the only person that has spoken to me in this park. You're the only person that has spoken to me in this park. And she said, it is up to consciousness for all of us. She went on this whole tangent about consciousness, and I'm sitting here listening to this woman, this blonde, blue-eyed, older woman talk to me, and time just kind of stopped. Pause, silence, just you couldn't hear the birds. It was like just she and I were having this conversation, the same experience that I had with Nordic Angels before. And I was looking at her, and she said, thank you so very much for helping me this last 6 months, and I'm going to go on. And I said, okay, well, she said, well, watch this for me. I'm going to go, and I'll be right back. And so I did. So I went to ride my bike, and I came right back, and I came back. When I came back, I waited for her, and then she said goodbye, and we hugged, and went on her way. And I got on my bike, and was driving, getting on my bike, and was riding back. And I turned away from her, and she was gone.
Wow.
I don't know what happened to her, but she was gone. So, we go back to that, okay, who was this? Why did it happen? Did I see what you do this whole logical, that right brain, left brain thing. And my mind goes, was she homeless? Where did she go? Maybe she went behind the bushes. You run down that rabbit hole of shoulda, coulda, woulda, and it just doesn't make sense. And for some reason, I had to go into the higher picture of this. Think about what happened, Peter. If you had not said hello to this person, you would not have been able to go on these television shows and radio shows to talk about politics in the United States, because I don't want to talk about it. And every show I did, we went down that particular subject. And so she served purpose for me as my own talking head, my pundit, but just turned out to be, I believe, and I think one of the guest hosts that I went on happens to believe the same thing, that perhaps she was a Nordic angel, because I attract Nordic angels into my life. The blue-eyed, blonde, very tall, very ethereal, very soft-spoken, and whenever they show up in my life, time ceases to exist. So I know she's either a walk-in or she's a Nordic angel. I know in my heart. I've gone back to that part. She's nowhere to be found. So how do you explain that? What was it? Just a quinky dinky? In your heart, the heart of truth.
There's something more.
What you experienced. Now, I don't know. I don't like to put her in a category. Was she a walk-in? Yes. Was she a Nordic angel? Perhaps. But we talked about codes. We talked about numerology. We talked about where the planet was going, the environment. Everything that was so not typical of what you have in the park with someone. It was a very advanced conversation. So I can't explain it. I still, to this day, you can see I kind of jammer like a child because I can't explain it because it's still new to me. And I haven't had a chance to logically put it all together in a compact consciousness. But in my world of thinking, she was presented to me for some reason. But again, I go back to what I said. Provide the people, the places, and the situation. And my job is to show up and let the universe do its job. And I think what I learned on the other side was that I keep my life very simple. I keep away from the negative energy, people, things like such. And I surround myself outside in Mother Nature. I meditate. And I work on cases that I want to work on. And I keep it very simple. And I try to do my part to be a good citizen on this planet.
Well, I was a big Stephen King fan, and he had a series called Dark Tower. And in that, he was touching upon this idea that I've always had in my mind since I was a kid, that there's people, you know, you hear about the 411 missing people. Well, that there's people that pop into our time. By the way, if you're a Patreon subscriber, go check out, I have on there my one little podcast I did separately from the show about time slips and walk-ins. And I cover cases, real life cases of people who swear they came from a different universe.
Mm-hmm.
Like just, you know, literally woke up one day and they're here, but the things are different. This is not their same universe, like the Mandela effect to the extreme.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Well, the thing too that is so similar with me is this time wobble that takes place. Because I remember when I was showing up and I'm looking and it's like there's this, you know, the little bleep, little bleep in the trees and the and the park and the fountains. And it's
like Neo sees the cat in the Matrix.
Yes,
twice.
But there's this wobble of energy that takes place, and when she was leaving, and just this wobble, and and I'm not saying that she did, but my mind goes, did she walk through that wobble? Did she vanish into that? I don't know. I've had some unusual encounters since I had my near-death experience. And I try to digest it as much as possible. There's many that I still am just in flux with. I feel like, wow, I can't explain them. But you have those moments in life that was just meant just for you, and you just try your very best to make sense of it.
Now, doing what you do, and you have people come to you with like homicide cases. These are, that's the most intensive. I remember my own personal experience with this once. On a paranormal investigation, I had a client totally abandon his home because he found out somebody was murdered there, and he got it at a cheap price. He knew it going in, but all this crazy stuff happened. And he took me in there, and there was no power in this place, whatever. But there was a driver's license that kept showing up of the murdered victim, and then it would disappear. He showed me pictures of the driver's license, but it had disappeared again. So I knew he was real, talking about it. I remember walking in with this candle because there's no power, and it was last minute. He just ended up talking me at a round of coffee. He's like, "You got to come to my house, check this out." I go in there with this candle, and I swear the flame would go down, and it led me to this cupboard in this kitchen, and I had an instant knowing, like a feeling. It was just a horrible feeling of this woman just getting bludgeoned to death. He didn't tell me how she died, just that she was murdered there. She was bludgeoned to death in this cabinet area here, wasn't she? He goes, "Yeah." I didn't tell you that. I don't know how you knew that. Did you know about this? I'm like, no. And I was done. I had to take a shower. It's like I couldn't get rid of that feeling for weeks after that experience. I'm like, man, I don't know how people like you go into these situations and shrug that off.
It's difficult, and as I said, I'm very particular about the cases I work on these days because I was on book tour back in 2000 and was it 2019, and I was in the South, and there was a lot of press on me, and they found out that I was at this particular resort speaking about my book, and apparently this child went missing, and they contacted me while I was in the middle of my lecture, and they pulled me out of the lecture and wanted me to go work on this case immediately, and the mother was frantic, and and I knew when I spoke with the neighbor who called on her behalf that the child was dead. I could see it was a murder. Yeah. And I the problem I have with these cases, especially when you're working with the police and detectives, and you can't go in as a psychic and just introduce yourself on a crime scene and say, "Hey, no. It just doesn't work that way."
No. And
the mother didn't understand that, and she was very upset and she was very angry with me. And I thought, I don't want to be the messenger who delivers the horrible truth that your child is murdered. But I saw what happened, and I get tons and tons and tons, weekly emails. People send me their overnight their cases that they want me to work on, and they're distraught, and they're desperate, and I'm that last house on the block. They've tried the detectives, the police, they've gone to other psychics. I'm that last house. It's like that car that goes off the cliff, and they come to me and they want me to put that car back on the road. I am that person, and I do my very best to work on cases that I feel like can at least help. And there are cases that I actually want to work on, that meaning that I'd like to present to a network and say, let's go down this particular avenue and let's solve this case and this case and this case. But that's another show.
Well, honestly, I've had a number of people that have worked with law enforcement that are mediums or psychics, whatever, and I believe that you guys have this capability to get this kind of information and can change things for a cold case, especially that's everybody's given up on, and sometimes reveal information. But it's a real sticky situation because.
Well, I've seen like an example, like on Netflix, you see these cold cases and unsolved mysteries, and you see, that there was one, I can't remember the keeper, about this nun that was murdered, and or the Cecil Hotel downtown Los Angeles.
God,
I constantly get information, and as I said, and there are sometimes too during. I can see things on the news, and I know when they're talking about. I can go behind the scenes and see the actual truth. So it's very difficult for me to take on the responsibility of all the information that I get. So that's why I kind of go out in Mother Nature, and that's why I rescue animals, and I try to keep my life very simple, so that when it is something, when I am called to do something incredible, I'm ready to go, and my mind is clear.
I sometimes one of the ideas I've had of having another show separate from Paranormal Soup is to get into true crime stuff, because I get sucked into it. Ever since that's another fascination I had is evil, human evil.
Yes.
How does it work? Why do people become monsters? In my opinion, some people are not.
Well, let me answer that for you. Just and we'll take you down another rabbit hole, and here it goes.
Yeah.
So, having been, I'm gifted at numerology. I'm gifted at astrology, and I do an ancient numerology and ancient astrology. So I'm going to throw something your way to your listening audience. So as I said, what I learned on the other side, we come back, rich, poor, ugly, overweight, a president, a pauper. This soul is constantly elevating to perfection. And once I've learned the leadership lessons and the diplomacy lesson and family lessons and religious and spiritual lessons and financial lessons, we perfect all these different challenges, and through each incarnation, we finally go to the other side and stay there. But if you have a soul such as Adolf Hitler, or you have a bad leader, or I'm trying to think about who, a good example.
Jeffrey Dahmer,
Yes, all these different people. If you do their charts, you can actually see that somewhere in their past lives that this soul did not elevate. And what happens, what I learned on the other side is, when we come back, we're given a choice. And when you go to Bordeaux, and you're there at this cleansing station, you make a choice, and you are given the choice. I come back, and I will, in this lifetime, become a writer, and this time I will become a psychic and not make fun of them like I did in one of the lifetimes. And you come back and get the other side of that coin to understand what it's like to be made fun of. In the other lifetime, I made fun of, and in this lifetime, so I understand the other side of the coin and why I'm a little bit more compassionate. And also by working with police, sometimes I walk on a crime scene, and the way I'm treated is just, I know
how cops are. I understand. Yeah.
So as I said, so I'm a lot more understanding, and I'm willing to be patient with it, because I first of all, before this happened to me, I didn't believe in any of this stuff. And now look at me. I'm kind of like a convert, if you will, promoting all this stuff.
Well, I guess we've talked about this recently. We had we had the Kasharel Mary Medris. So you're talking about, and you've talked about this too, about on the other side, in Bardo, and there's no judgment. You have this life review, there's no judgment. But the hard pill to swallow is the Adolf Hitlers, the Jeffrey Dahmers. Like, did Jeffrey Dahmer choose to come here as a serial killer, or did something go horribly wrong? That's the hard pill to swallow or understand, is the evil. And that's why I'm fascinated by it too, to be honest.
But understand, what is it, what we're doing here, we're keeping it here on a very practical, this is not right, and there's judgment here, and look what he did, and this is crime, and this is evil. We're there. What we need to do, how did any of this benefit collective consciousness? That's where we need to take it. And so when I look at this last year of where we were with COVID and the back and forth with the presidential campaign, what did we learn from all this? What did we really learn from all this? We came that close to losing, our country, our freedoms. We experienced, I lost my mom and a dear friend to COVID. So it taught me a valuable lesson of again, going back to near, none of us are guaranteed, tomorrow. And so I live my life as though tomorrow is my last day on this planet. And so if that be the case, I'm going to be a nice citizen to CBS and cable and the taxi driver and the flight attendant and the stranger on the street and the barbers. I'm just going to do that because I really feel in my heart that on some level, on a very small level, I'm shifting consciousness, and someone will listen to your show tonight and hear something that both you and I have said, and it will click them, and they'll talk to their father, and he'll talk to his best friend, and he'll talk to the coworker, and basically you shift consciousness one person at a time. So you and I are playing that part.
I gotcha. It's just the role. I guess. I mean, I had Mary. I talked about. I had on a couple weeks ago. She's like, She's like, we got to talk about how you focus. I'm talking to her tomorrow. She's doing my Akashic Realm reading. But
how cool is that?
Why you focus on? You're great to talk to, but you go to the dark side. Because I have a was worried my wife, my fascination with serial killers, but it's my fascination with human evil. Where does the soul go so wrong to separate from God or separate from everybody to hurt other people this way? I mean, do horrible, evil things. Why does evil exist in the world? It's a big question.
And I'll answer it real quick. There's a spiritual thread that stays with us in every lifetime, every incarnation. Got it?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I haven't done your numerology astrology chart, so I don't know what that is. And you're doing the cosmic reading. How amazing is that? But I look at it this way. I was an alcoholic. I was a failed writer because of the disease of alcoholism. So in one of my lifetimes, I didn't, I came back to write. I didn't do it. So in this lifetime, I sat down and wrote a book. In this lifetime, I was in media, and I now have a platform to speak to people. And I think, my tongue was cut out in one of my lifetimes. So it's funny that I'm, come back stuttering. Everything
right.
was so. I would cover my mouth up. I still have the habit of doing that. I'm so, paranoid about what I say and how I say it. And so, I learned, as I said, that having my tongue cut out and speaking up in this lifetime was a challenge to speak up and to lay my ground down and call the speaker of truth and speak my truth. And it was really difficult for me when people were criticizing me and calling me crazy about my near-death experience. Their opinions mattered more than my own. So I had to learn to overcome all this spiritual thread to finally come to peace with why I'm here and what I'm here to do. And so we all, as I said, come back, with lessons. All of us come back with lessons. And I think the most important thing that you've tapped into is that you have found your authentic purpose, as have I. And that makes the world amazing for you and I.
I really do. I mean, I felt like all these things. I was a musician, and I wanted to be a writer, but I was also into film and TV. I went to film school. Like all these little things that I thought I was going to do didn't happen, but all of them were little pieces that led to putting together this show.
Oh, absolutely. Every step that you've taken up to this tonight has led you to this conversation. Because imagine as a host on a program and you didn't know what a walk-in was, or time travel. You see me from my end. When I go on these shows, I'm like, oh God, where do I go with this? Because I don't want to edit anymore.
Right.
Am I making sense? I choose not to edit my life anymore. My words, my stories, my background. This is who I am. I'm proud of it. I know that feeling. I embrace it. Where I used to like, I can't talk about that right now.
Oh yeah, no, I don't know. It happened to me. Not long before I started doing the show, and probably helped me convince the shows. My wife had a childhood friend, almost like family to her, but he very skeptical of everything, totally different person than I am. And he finally said, well, he knew we were paranormal investigators, but I didn't like to talk to people, tell them like a paranormal investigator, it was hard. But after this conversation, I was like, screw it, I'm done with people. They either take it or leave it. I don't care. I'm going to talk. Because I tell them my whole shadow person experience, why, it's real, what happened to me. I was levitated off my bed. I was physically touched, tormented by this thing. It's real. And all the other stuff I said. And he straight up goes, oh, you're a liar.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I said, you know what? Screw you. You don't know my personal experience. You don't know me. And after that moment, I said, you know what? Everybody can call me a liar. I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. We're never going to put this together. We're never going to figure out what's going on. That reality is not what people try to tell you it is unless we start opening up and talking about it.
Well, let me share something with what I learned from the other side. And I think this is important, for me, and it has really helped me to understand. We as the collective consciousness cannot go forward unless we tap into new thought or a new thought energy, religion, which actually serves its purpose, and science, and the spiritual realm. It is all one. And I think for thousands of years we put religion here, and we put judgment over here. Everyone's been put in categories, and I don't like that. I think, as I said, in order for us to collectively go together, all these things serve purpose. My journey up the mountain and your journey up the mountain, it may be different, but once we get to the top of that pinnacle, the view is spectacular, and that's what we need to focus on. How I got there and what my journey was all about. And I think why you and I are talking on such a level tonight, which is so interesting, is both you and I have made the journey, and we both climbed to the top of the mountain, and what we're seeing in front of us is amazing.
One of the things that we've been focusing on a lot lately, besides near death, is reincarnation. It seems like we've been talking about that a lot lately. And for me, personal believer in reincarnation, being a Gnostic, I grew up in a home with a mom who's eventually became a Buddhist and a dad who's kind of an atheist. But I was left open to any religion or any idea. I was still a Gnostic, question everything. But I had, and I've talked about on the show, I know people, two very vivid dreams in my life in my 20s when I was going through like the chakra stuff and everything that were past lives. I'm convinced they were two past life experiences I was given a special look into. And both of them, when I reflect back on these two past lives that I know I was shown, totally explain why I've been wired the way I am since my earliest memories. Why I question religion, why I don't like authority, why I don't like the government. It all of it explains it to a T. And I feel like I was given a gift to be able to see these two glimpses that were of where I came from and why I am the way I am. It was a gift. I'll say that. And it convinced me that there's so much more around us interacting with us every day, and things about who we are deep down, our soul, that we have no idea of yet. So many people don't even understand why they do the things they do.
Well, you know what? I do remember I mentioned to you earlier in the show, I travel off and do grid work, right? So every 11/11, I go somewhere until 11/29 and do work. Well, I go to the ley lines. But I didn't tell you because I didn't know we were going to go on this particular subject, but here we go. I go and I find my past lives. And
that's
where
awesome.
Yeah. And so an example, when I went to Washington, D.C. to do what I call my solar return, I went to a Papa cemetery, and there I was. I keep note of every past life that I can remember.
Yeah.
I went into the Watchtown Mountains when I was a 6-year-old little girl who ran in the forest and froze to death during the winter storm. I was a slave named Clarence who was beaten by a slave owner. I went to London.
I was too.
So
I was a little girl beaten to death by a slave owner. That was one of my past life visions.
Yes. So do you see what I'm saying? Every time we reincarnate, we elevate into a new consciousness. And I have come back with so much compassion and so much sympathy for collective consciousness. I am the one who believes in the underdog. I'm the one that believes that, the animal kingdom and the children and all. And in this very unusual time in our history where people like you and I are the beacons of hope, and we are the messengers, because there is an audience for this. And the people, as I said, want to hear this because I learned when I was in Denver, and I was one of the keynote speakers for Near Death Association event. And this fireman waited all the way. I was signing books and autographs, and I did another video show. And he followed me everywhere until we got where there was no one around. And this fireman came and just broke down in tears and told me about his near-death experience. He just showed up randomly at this hotel and happened to get into the room where I was and waited for me until I had no one around me. And he cried like a child in my arms and just shared his story. As I said, you never know that the person that you're supposed to help out is that last person in line who waits and waits and waits to hear. And we went into reincarnation and all the stuff that his religious father was so strict with him, and just the lot that he went through. And he just was so closeted with this information. He was such an advanced soul. And it was as though our conversation set him free. So, as I said, you just never know that what someone hears tonight can change them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And that's why I think what you're doing is amazing. And as I said, for me, all the ridicule and the broken relationships and the being fired from jobs and being escorted out of a 4th of July party because I was on Sightings and I was a ghost chaser. I mean,
jeez.
Oh, I know. It has all happened to me. And, you know, so getting to this point tonight, as I said, I'm very grateful because, as I said, you and I got a chance to talk like two guys in a living room talking about things that really matter to us. And if it matters to you and I, it's going to matter to your audience.
That's why I do what I do. And that's why I have, like I told him before the show, I don't have pre-scripted questions. I have like a sheet here of like a couple things on it.
Well, as I said, I have mine here. We didn't even go down there.
Yeah, that's how it always goes on Paranormal Soup. Well, thank you so much, Peter Anthony.
Well, thank you.
When the Accidental Prophet comes out, I need to know. We want to get you back on the show for sure to talk more. Because there's so much more. Time runs so fast. But that is it, guys. We will be back next Sunday, same bad time, same bad channel, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Central, 11 p.m. 2 a.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific time. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. And then also, thank you to all our Patreons, which are about 9 or 10. But those $2 a month you pay do help pay the bills. There are some exclusive content things I'm going to be adding. I know I keep saying it, but there's more on there. There's a podcast you can do about time slips and walk-ins, exclusive to Patrons. The $2 a month there does help pay the bills for the show. And the biggest thank you to everyone who shares this show out and keep telling people about Paranormal Soup, a place where the paranormal happens live and where you can come and just join the discussion and talk about, with no judgment, about your own experiences in this world. We got to piece together what is happening around us. This is not the reality they've told you it is. There's a lot more going on, and that's what we talk about every Sunday night, guys. All right, see us next Sunday. Have a great night.